Welcome to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. Chapter 1. The beginning is the danger of destroying the country. Rose Country, Rose City. Yuan stood on the top of the city wall wearing a full-body plate armor, looking at the endless enemy camps in the distance, surrounded by knights in full coverage armor. Your Majesty, the situation is not optimistic now. The Qixi Kingdom army that has always been friendly with us has been dispatched to fight against the orcs. We probably have no reinforcements, a knight said with a sad face to the old Genichi. After the knight reported to Yuan, he wanted to see some sorrow on Yuan's face, but he didn't expect that Yuan not only didn't have any sorrow at all, but calmly looked at the camps of the 50,000 Nord army all over the mountains and plains in the distance. How is this going? The knight was a little puzzled. According to the cowardly and timid temperament of the king in the past, this time he was probably in a panic. When the city was besieged, he was begging his grandpa to tell his grandma to find reinforcements. Why did His Majesty suddenly not panic when he reported that it was impossible for reinforcements to come? Instead he was so calm. The knight couldn't figure it out, but he was also very anxious, worried about the future of the country of Ross, and worried about his own wealth and life. He became a knight at a young age, and he didn't want to die on the city wall with such a hapless king as Yuan. But he didn't know that Yuan's shell is still the same now, but the soul inside has changed. Yuan is the king of the Lost Kingdom, but he is not from this world, but has just traveled here. King. At the beginning, Yuan was so excited when he learned that he had traveled through time. Unexpectedly, Yuan could pass through to such a noble status in his lifetime. Rorreland Continent, this is a very vast continent. The Kingdom of Ross is a small country. There is only one major city with a population of 100,000, more than a dozen towns, and hundreds of villages. The total population can be about 500,000 or so. But it is true that Yuan is a king, but he is about to end his reign as a king. The Kingdom of Loss is dying. More than a dozen towns in the country were basically occupied by the enemy Nord Kingdom. Only Rose City, the capital with a population of 100,000, is left, and it is the only big city that has not been lost. But it's almost gone. Up to now, the enemy of the Kingdom of Ross, the army of the Kingdom of Nord, has besieged the capital of Ross City. Many attacks on the city wall were repulsed, but everyone understood that it was only a matter of time before the city of Lost Kingdom was destroyed in the face of the 50,000 army of the Nord Kingdom. The defenders in the city also suffered heavy casualties, leaving only more than 150 knights and more than 1,000 ordinary soldiers. It was such a situation that Yuan traveled through time. Your Majesty, the city of Ross can no longer be defended. Let us surrender. The enemy is a knight with at least 1,000 men, let alone an army of 50,000. The knight spoke anxiously to Yuan. Knights are undoubtedly high-end combat power in these small countries. A knight can kill at least 100 ordinary soldiers. And the current enemy has more than 1,000 knights alone, they only have 1,000 ordinary soldiers left. Such a disparity in combat power. The enemy is present, disturbing the morale of the army, it should be cut. If it was the old Yuan, in this situation, he must have lost his mind and listened to what he had. But it was different now. The knight didn't know that the king in front of him had changed, but Yuan suddenly turned his head, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. The knight met Yuan's eyes, and he felt a chill in his heart, and a chill rushed from his back to his heart. Pull it down and send it to the guillotine. If anyone dares to disturb the morale of the army, it's like this person. Yuan looked around at the knights loyal to him. With cold eyes and frosty face, he said coldly. Immediately, two knights in full body armor stepped forward to hold the knight up, and dragged him down to the guillotine. The knights guarding Yuan all around looked at Yuan in amazement. A chill came from behind him. They feel that His Majesty today is completely different from the feeling he gave them before. Today's His Majesty is full of deterrence, his gaze is like a sharp sword, piercing into the depths of their hearts, as if he can see through the weakest point in their hearts at a glance. Is this the Emperor? The surrounding knights felt inexplicably afraid of Yuan, and hope. Perhaps, only such a powerful and heroic majesty can lead them out of danger. Your Majesty, King Nord sent another envoy just now. A knight spoke to Yuan. You don't need to report, you know what they are going to say. Yuan was wearing a full-plate armor and sitting on a stone bench next to him, with a sneer on his handsome face. Before Yuan finished speaking, a messenger yelled loudly from under the city wall, King Yuan III. You are at the end of your rope. Surrender, not only for yourself, but also for the sake of the 100,000 people in the city. You guys, do you want to surrender? Yuan sat on the stone bench and looked around at the knights in front of him. His gaze was like a sharp sword, directly piercing the minds of all the knights. Your Majesty, we will swear allegiance to you to the death, and we will die without regret. A knight took a deep breath and knelt down on one knee in front of Yuan. Your Majesty, as knights, we will defend you to the death, and we will never regret it. We, the Knights of Rose, swear to protect His Majesty to the death, 9 deaths without regret. More than 100 knights all knelt on one knee in front of Yuan and shouted in unison. The right fist hammered heavily on the breastplate and made a loud sound. The youngest knight was less than 19 years old, and the young knights knelt on one knee in front of Yuan. They are the last knights of the Kingdom of Loss, and also the most loyal knights. Some of their hands were still shaking, and they were also afraid of death, but today's Yuan gave them an inexplicable sense of trust. Although they don't know where this sense of trust comes from, they believe that Yuan can lead them out of the predicament in front of them. As for Yuan, he really has full support. It looks like they're going to stick around. In the camp of the Nord army outside the city, Nord King Laoj IV looked at the city and sneered. Pass down the order and prepare to attack the city. After the city is broken, the sword will not be sealed for 3 days. If you don't seal the sword, you will slaughter the city. Looking at death like home, everyone will say big words, you only have 156 knights, and only 1,000 soldiers left, while the enemy has at least 1,000 knights alone, and 50,000 soldiers. Besides, the food in your city can only last for less than a month, what do you use to defend against the enemy's attack? At this time, a proud woman in golden lion pattern armor walked over. So, Sir Ruthia, what do you mean? Genichi raised his eyebrows, looking at the beautiful knight. With the strength of my great knight and the title of my master, the Duke of Golden Lion, they dare not do anything to me. I can lead you to break through, Your Majesty. Lucia looked sideways at the camps of the Nord Kingdom's army that was almost all over the mountains beyond the city wall, and said to Yuan contemptuously. Ha ha ha, don't think I don't know what the Duke of Golden Lion is thinking. Yuan smiled, but the smile was full of danger. P.S. New book upload, ask for collection, ask for flowers, ask for evaluation votes. I want it all. Chapter 2 I am the king. Ask for flowers, please collect. The Duke of the Golden Lion is a Duke of the Gutongxi Empire, and he controls more than 10 duchies and several kingdoms under his command. But how are they obtained? It is nothing more than sending knights to protect the kings who are about to perish, as puppets, and then sending knight troops to help them carry out the so-called restoration. Relying on this hand, the Duke of Golden Lion controls many small countries. And once the ancient Genichi is taken away by Russia and goes to the Duke of the Golden Lion, even if he restores the country with the help of the Duke of the Golden Lion, he will only be a puppet for the rest of his life. It is impossible for Yuan to be someone else's puppet. Moreover, who knows whether the Duke of the Golden Lion is behind the Nord Kingdom's attack on the Kingdom of Loss. Your Majesty, you have to think about it. Without the protection of the Duke of the Golden Lion, your life can't be protected by the more than 100 knights around you. The corners of Lucia's mouth curled up. Although she was using an honorific title, the threat in her tone could be felt without saying much. This is a blatant threat. The Ross knights around were furious, glaring at Lucia one by one. They are the most ordinary knights, although one can kill at least 100 ordinary soldiers, but Lucia is a great knight. How they kill ordinary soldiers, then a great knight can kill them in any way. But as long as the ancient Genichi gives the order, they will attack Ruthia bravely and kill this woman who dares to offend their king. A bunch of trash. Lu Sha spat out the 4 words contemptuously. Yuan looked at Lu Sha with a sneer on his handsome face. When Lu Sha was watched by Yuan, a chill rose in her heart, but she didn't want to lose face in front of Yuan, and she stared at Yuan not to be outdone. In Liu Sha's heart, there are only two choices before Ji Yuan. 1. Being destroyed by the Nord Kingdom, being a subjugated slave is most likely to be sent to the guillotine. 2. Give up everything and go with Lucia, and become a puppet to the Duke of Golden Lion. Maybe the Duke of Golden Lion will send troops to help him restore the country in the future, but after the restoration of the country, he will be a puppet for the rest of his life. When a subjugated slave is sent to the guillotine, he is still a puppet who will be manipulated all his life. Pick one of two. But Liu Sha didn't know, Ji Yuan, he had a third choice. Question mark. Your Majesty, welcome to the Industrial Revolution system. Question mark. Bring the dawn of technology to this world without technology. Do you use the 3-day experience card of the U.S. Army Reinforced Company of World War II and the 3-day experience card of the Artillery Support Team now? This is the golden finger that Ji Yuan showed up this morning. Ji Yuan was expressionless, looking at Liu Sha coldly. Seeing Ji Yuan's cold gaze, Liu Sha felt a chill in her heart. Sir Ruthia, do you know the crime of disturbing the morale of the army before the war? Ji Yuan stood up and stood in front of Lucia wearing a full armor. His tall and handsome figure was a head taller than the female knight Lucia. Naturally, from the inside out, it exudes a sense of oppression. It's not simply the crushing of personal strength, but a sense of oppression from a very majestic superior. In terms of strength, Ji Yuan is a knight, and Liu Sha is a great knight. But now, watching by others, Ji Yuan's aura is overwhelming that of Liu Sha, a great knight. But Liu Sha was startled, her aura was so low that she didn't dare to meet Ji Yuan's eyes. Experience card use. The 3-day experience card of the U.S. Military Strengthened Company in World War II has been used. They will come in a reasonable way. The artillery support team is ready. When you want to use it, please mark the target on the built-in map, and the artillery will attack automatically. In Your Majesty, do you install the Butterfly Early Industrial Revolution suit in the novice gift package now? 10 steam engines, 1 set of 98K rifle manufacturing industrial assembly line in the early 20th century, 1 set of bullet manufacturing assembly line. No, not installing for now. Ji Yuan just stood like this, but Liu Sha was inexplicably afraid to speak at all. It was as if in front of her was not Ji Yuan, but some desolate dragon that devoured the world. Liu Sha gritted her silver teeth, and subconsciously hid her trembling right hand behind her back, not wanting others to notice that she was trembling. There was also anger on the frosty face, and when people are afraid, they are angry. Why, this Ji Yuan is clearly the king of a small country that is about to be destroyed, and her own strength is only that of an ordinary knight. Why does it make her so frightened? Even if she is facing her master, the Gutongxi Empire is under 10,000 people. Above, the Golden Lion Duke who controls dozens of countries and has an army of millions, she has never been so afraid. Then why is it like this when facing the king of such a small country? At this moment, inside the city wall tower, there was no one there. Many people dressed strangely and carrying things like wooden sticks climbed up the city wall and came before Ji Yuan and the knights. These are American soldiers summoned by Ji Yuan. They were wearing World War II U.S. military uniforms, helmets, and M1 Garand semi-automatic rifles in their hands. In World War II, a company of the U.S. Army had almost 200 people. In the number of the company summoned by Ji Yuan, the weapon configuration is even more luxurious. It is a reinforced company. There are 400 people. Nearly 400 Garand semi-automatic rifles, nearly 40 M1918 automatic rifles, 10 M1919 Browning machine guns, and 3 12.7mm M2 heavy machine guns. The effective range of the 12.7mm M2 heavy machine gun is more than 1,800 meters. And 12 M2 mortars, 20 bazookas. Not to mention that there will be an artillery support team in the future. It has the firepower of 20 M59 155mm cannons. A single shot can raze a building to the ground. This is your reliance. A group of people with fire sticks and strange helmets. Without even armor, what's the use of hundreds of people? Hundreds of militiamen with wooden sticks, it just made me laugh out loud. Liu Sha forcibly suppressed the fear of Ji Yuan in her heart, raised her beautiful eyebrows, and said, "When you were beheaded by King Nord, let's see if you can be so arrogant. After thinking about it for a while, Liu Sha felt the wail of Ji Yuan being sent to the guillotine, and immediately felt extremely happy. As for Ji Yuan, let him jump for a while. Ji Yuan gave Lucia a cold look, and waved his hand. Sir Lucia disturbed the morale of the army before the battle and offended the king. This is an unforgivable crime. But because you are not under my command, you can be spared the death penalty, but the living crime cannot be escaped. I will execute the military law in place of the Duke of Golden Lion. As soon as these words came out, all the knights around held the hilts around their waists, eager to try. All of them are full of pride. This is the king they should follow. The emperor who truly despises everything. Who dares to touch me? I am a great knight under the Duke of the Golden Lion, and you want to touch me just because of your group of stinky fish and rotten shrimp. Ruthia's beautiful eyes widened, and she scolded angrily, and the frightening power that belonged to the great knight emanated from her body. One person can beat more than 100 ordinary knights on the city wall. Sniper. Ji Yuan waved his hand with a sneer, and not far from the city wall, an American soldier covered with a gray cloth seemed to be integrated with the city wall, poking his head out. The sniper scope of the Springfield M1903 rifle in his hand reflected light by accident. Boom. A gunshot. P.S. Asking for flowers, asking for collections, asking for evaluation tickets, I want all of these. Chapter 3 One-sided crushing. Ask for flowers, please collect. The alarm bells rang out in Ruthia's heart, but before she could take any action, the armor on her abdomen burst instantly, and blood splattered everywhere. One shot is a serious injury. Here, what is this movement? The knights were horrified, only hearing his voice but not seeing his attack. A big knight was seriously injured and fell to the ground. Is this the reliance of His Majesty the King? It's so powerful. And Lucia fell to the ground, covering her abdomen with her hands, and looked down in disbelief. Why was she suddenly injured? I only heard voices. Could it be that Ji Yuan has reached the strength of the legendary 21-day angel paladin? Hang her up on the city wall. Ji Genichi beckoned, and there were two knights who bound Lucia and then hung her up. With the great knight's vitality, this degree of injury is enough to make her incapacitated, but not fatal. Looking at the unconscious big knight who was suspended. This is what happens when you fight against His Majesty the King. Such a thought arose in the hearts of all the Ross knights. What fear is there for the Nord army? Knights of Rose, never regret. Defend the city of Rose to the death. Defend His Majesty to the death. Swear to live and die with Lost City. Under the leadership of who knows, hundreds of knights roared out one after another. Woo! At this time, a horn sounded suddenly in the distance. Your Majesty! Your Majesty! The Nords are attacking the city. There was a panicked shout, and the drums of war were beating instantly. Chop off the heads of these damned Nord savages. The Knights of Ross are invincible. For Your Majesty. Under the roar of the Ross Knights, they began to defend the city wall. Shish! The rain of arrows fell on the top of the city, and because the distance was too far, they started to shoot arrows, so not many fell on the top of the city. And because of Ji Yuan's order, the American soldiers were guarded by knights in full body armor holding large shields, so nothing happened. Your Majesty, be careful. A knight guarding Ji Yuan raised a large shield as high as a man in front of Ji Yuan, blocking all the falling arrows. Very well, what's your name? Ji Yuan asked casually. Your Majesty, your name is Rhodes. The knight replied in trepidation. After the kingdom of Nord is destroyed, I will make you a viscount. Thank you, Your Majesty. Knight Rhodes was overjoyed and quickly thanked him. The Nord army set up banners one by one, and the Nord nobles led their troops to push the siege ladders to attack the city wall. Waves of arrows shot down from the top of the city, and many Nord soldiers fell to the ground with arrows, but more Nord soldiers pushed the siege ladder truck one after another. Attack! Attack! The first person to climb the city wall will be rewarded with 1,000 gold coins. Attack the city wall, destroy the country of Ross, and capture Ji Yuan, the king of Ross, alive. I will execute him myself. The king of Nord yelled on his horse, commanding the army. Knights, withdraw from the city wall defense. My mercenaries, prepare. Under Ji Genichi's order, the U.S. companies are all ready. And the Ross Knights reluctantly gave up their defensive positions on the city wall. Although Luthia was seriously injured by a shot before, none of the knights could see exactly how Luthia was seriously injured, so they didn't know that it was actually the gun in the hands of the American soldiers. They also thought in their hearts that these strange wooden sticks could be used for war. Just kidding. But I thought again, Gu Yuan is their Majesty the King, it is impossible to harm them. Out of loyalty to Gu Yuan, these knights could only follow Gu Yuan's orders. Huh, look, Your Majesty. The soldiers on their walls have all been withdrawn, and replaced by some strange people, without armor, who seem to be holding some strange things in their hands. A knight in the Nord army pointed at the top of the city and shouted. With their eyesight, they can see the situation above the city clearly even across 1,000 meters. Huh, what's the situation? Rag IV was taken aback for a moment, a bit confused as to why Gu Yuan did this. The next moment he laughed freely, and said, "It seems that Gu Yuan has given up resisting. If he surrenders and wants me to kill him, then he's thinking wrong. Order the knights to go up to the top of the city first and open the city gate. I will enter the city and cut off Gu Yuan's head with my own hands." Rag IV laughed. With the order of Rag IV, more than 1,000 people galloped out of the 50,000 army, all of them were knights in heavy plate armor. They are all wearing heavy armor, but they are all galloping like flying, which shows how strong their physical fitness is. With an army of 1,000 knights in hand, all the surrounding kingdoms will fall into my hands. Rag IV was full of pride in his heart, and he had a rampant smile on his face. He seemed to see that after the capture of Ross City, he continued to lead troops to capture several neighboring kingdoms in succession, forming a huge empire that was no less powerful than the ancient Stone Empire. In Rag IV's heart, he will be the first emperor of his future empire as a hero. Gu Yuan stared coldly at the thousands of powerful knights who were approaching the city wall in the distance, wearing heavy armor, walking like flying, and moving like flying. His right palm was slightly raised. The next moment it fell instantly. 400 semi-automatic rifles and more than 10 light and heavy machine guns fired instantly on the city wall. Snort. An arrow shot from nowhere hit the breastplate of a Nord knight. The arrow broke instantly, and the Nord knight was unharmed. He sneered and continued to run towards the city wall. But the next moment, countless explosions sounded instantly. It can easily withstand swords, bows and arrows, and the armor with strong defense is like paper at this moment. Subscribe to Chinese novel Audio Wave. His breastplate and helmet were pierced by bullets in an instant, the armor was shattered, blood gushed out, and his whole body was bloody from the beating. He died instantly without even screaming. Nearly 400 semi-automatic rifles, 40 automatic rifles, and more than a dozen light and heavy machine guns fired at the same time. Their firepower and sound were extremely terrifying. It's a loud noise. It hurts. What is this sound? Quickly take off the helmet. On the top of the city wall, the Ross Knights who were wearing fully enclosed helmets seemed to have punched, their tinnitus continued, and the shock was incomparable. The knights screamed, and took off the full coverage helmets on their heads that were hummed by the gunshots in great embarrassment, their eyes widened, and they breathed heavily. If they took off the helmets more slowly, they might be killed by the constant echoing gunshots in the helmets. And after taking off the helmet, the field of view widened, and the scene in front of him immediately stunned and shocked all the Ross Knights. Just for a while, less than 10 seconds, looking from a height, I saw that the heavy armor on the thousands of Nord Knights who were about to climb the city wall was like paper, broken and blood splattered everywhere. All of a sudden, the armor under the city wall was shattered, and corpses were scattered all over the field, like a purgatory on earth. Ah, what is this? Help me. Ah, magician, magician, there are magicians on the walls. Howling, screaming, the mighty and powerful knights are like weak lambs, they just want to escape from the purgatory on earth created in this instant. More than 1,000 knights, more than half of the casualties in an instant. Some Nord knights who were lucky enough to survive screamed and ran back. Powerful and terrifying. Countless powerful knights who had practiced for decades and slaughtered hundreds of enemies easily, like cutting melons and vegetables, died under the city wall so easily. One by one, the bodies were horribly dead, the corpses were smashed to pieces by the powerful impact of the bullets, and the fragments of the armor were scattered all over the ground. These are all knights of my Nord kingdom. These bastards. Where did the kingdom of Ross invite magicians? At the last moment, Raga IV was full of pride and dreamed of becoming the emperor in the future. At this moment, he widened his eyes and let out a miserable howl with pain in his heart. His voice was like a cuckoo weeping blood. Your Majesty, don't panic. I'm here. At this time, a figure in the Nord army who was covered in black robes walked out proudly. Seeing countless flame elements floating around, flying up and down, the momentum is soaring, which makes people feel terrified. P.S. Asking for flowers, asking for collections, asking for evaluation tickets, I want all of these. This book adds more information. Newcomer and new book, but the author is confident in writing this book well, and I hope readers will support it. The minimum daily guarantee is 8,000 characters and 4 updates. The following are the rules for adding updates. Every 500 flowers will add a change, and every 200 evaluation votes will add a change. If there are rewards, 1 more reward will be added for every 5 more people who donate. For every 10 additional comments, 1 update will be added, and 1 person who cleans the building will not count. The above is the update situation of this book, and I would like to ask all the readers for your support. Chapter 4 is this. God's Wrath. Ask for flowers. Ask for an evaluation ticket. National teacher, leave it to you. Upon hearing this, Rag IV hurriedly said to Geno. Looking at the situation, the kingdom of Ross should have recruited a lot of wandering mages, but they are all a bunch of rabble. Geno stood confidently with his hands behind his back. HMPH, Kingdom of Ross, not only you have magicians, I have them too. Rag IV was overjoyed and calmed down, with a smile on his face again. Geno is a wandering mage. He was expelled from the Dragon Mage Academy in the Central Region because he made a mistake in researching taboo demon magic. In terms of level, he is also quite strong. After graduating from the Dragon Mage Academy, he stayed for more than 10 years, but his strength when he reached the bottleneck, he didn't make any progress, so he took the risk to study demon magic, but the Zhongyu Dragon Mage Academy found out and expelled him. So Geno traveled long distances to the border of the mainland, which is here, the land of the countries of the western regions. The magic resources here are very scarce, and it has always been a place of disdain for powerful magicians. But Geno has no choice. With his level, he can only be sought after by people in this place where there are basically no mages. So he came to the Nord Kingdom not long ago and was worshipped as the national teacher by Rag IV of the Nord Kingdom. To be honest, Geno was very disdainful when the Nord Kingdom attacked the city, thinking that he didn't need to take action, but then the movement on the city wall startled him. Because of this level, in his impression, only magicians are qualified to launch intensive attacks. It seems that for this battle, I have to turn over my family. Geno thought to himself. He has been in the Central Territory for many years, and he still has some savings. Among them is a scroll of the forbidden magic spell. Once cast, within 100 meters of the target is a complete ban on magic. So what if there are too many mages? Once I cast this forbidden magic spell, no matter how powerful your magic power is, you can only obediently catch them. Geno is very proud. If a magician has no magic power, he is basically powerless. He must show his strength in this battle. Only in this way can Raj IV completely obey his words. Only in this way will Raj IV devote all the power of the whole country to support him alone. After he completes the demon decree, he will go back and slaughter the mages of the Central Dragon Academy who did not know what to do and dared to expel him. Geno took a step forward, as if he had seen the future where he would achieve great success in the demonic decree, completely occupy the Central Territory, and become the emperor of the Magic Empire alone. Forbidden spell. Now, Jian Nuo moved forward for a moment, and then he advanced hundreds of meters away from Rag IV's side. The magic robe on his body opened without wind, and a scroll filled with densely packed purple runes flew out from the cuff, and instantly turned into a stream of light and flew towards the head of Lost City. What is this stuff? Yuan stood on the top of the wall and watched the purple light flying towards him suspiciously. In the next moment, the purple light turned into a huge purple rune array that enveloped the city, and then disappeared in the next moment. HMPH, once the banning spell comes out, the victory will be decided. Geno turned and stood proudly, with a disdainful smile on his face, his back to the city wall. The gunshots on the city wall stopped, not because the banning spell had worked, but because all the American soldiers touched their bodies in uncomprehending manner. They were all ready to die when the purple light flew in, but it looked like a firework. It was useless, it was just for people to see the movement. The movement really stopped. Rag IV thought it worked, he was overjoyed, and immediately roared, "The enemy magician has been controlled by our national teacher, everyone, charge. Take the top of the city. I want to cut down Gu Yuan myself head." As soon as Raj IV said this, everyone's hearts were shocked, and their morale immediately surged. More than 300 knights who escaped by chance, yes, more than 1,000 knights went out, and only 300 escaped after a while. They all roared, their eyes under the helmets were red, they wanted to avenge their colleagues who died tragically in the city. Kill all the losers. Come on. The war drum was sounded in an instant, and the 50,000 army rushed towards the city wall like a tiger with a drumbeat. Once there are more than 10,000 people, there is no limit, and the densely packed soldiers are like an ocean. This scene is frightening. Ha 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 ha. Gu Yuan, let's see if you're still alive this time. Rag IV laughed wildly again. 50,000 people attacking the city wall together. Gu Yuan stood at the top of the wall and let out a hearty laugh. This time the artillery support team can come in handy. Such a dense formation obviously appeared for the purpose of being bombed. Artillery support team, use. A virtual screen that only he can see appeared in front of Gu Yuan, and above the screen was the battlefield in front of him. Gu Yuan focused his firepower to mark the place where the purple light appeared before. If he guessed correctly, that place should be where the enemy magician is. Magician, you have to withstand the artillery bombardment. Gu Yuan sneered and gave the order. In an open space inside the city, 20 M59 155mm artillery guns appeared, and the dark barrels exuded endless coldness under the sun. The next moment, they roared like a god descending. The caliber 155mm artillery is so powerful that even a building will be razed to the ground with one shot. What's more, 20 guns fired at the same time, and Gu Yuan marked the target. Not only is it powerful, but it is also extremely accurate. And over there, Geno was still standing there with his hands behind his back very proudly. After all, in his opinion, a magician who has been banned is like a chicken rib, and his body protection spell is generally weaker than magic, let alone a bow and arrow. On this battlefield, it is impossible for people and weapons to hurt me. Geno laughed heartily, very proud of himself, and even wanted to go to the city wall to wave around himself. Boom! Suddenly a loud noise exploded not far from him. Ah! Dozens of soldiers screamed and were thrown away. The soldiers at the center of the explosion were even more fragmented, with corpses and armor fragments all over the floor. Geno shuddered and stared dumbfounded. Call out! There was a piercing sound in the sky, and Geno stared blankly at the sky. I saw a black spot in the sky falling towards him. What's this? Geno's mind went blank for a moment. The next moment, a cannonball exploded beside Geno. It's not magic, but he'll never know what it is. Geno's body protection spell broke instantly like a piece of paper. After an explosion, the wind swept away, and only a pile of corpses remained on the spot. This mage from Central Territory died here. This shell not only killed Geno, but also killed more than 10 knights around him. The loud sound of rifles, machine guns, and artillery filled the battlefield. Under the tall city wall, countless explosions raged, and soldiers of the Nord Kingdom ran around like crazy, screaming loudly. Their bodies were pierced by bullets, shattered by shells, and blown away. Their wills, like their bodies, were shattered to pieces. Is this the wrath of God? From behind, Raga IV looked palely at the scene in front of him, which was like a purgatory on earth, like the wrath of the gods. The 50,000 army was swept away in an instant. One moment they were laughing happily, the next moment the 50,000 troops were instantly destroyed. Rag IV completely collapsed. Boom! A loud noise sounded not far from him, and the body of Logger IV was instantly blown away by the air wave generated by the explosion. When he landed, he was bleeding from all 7 orifices and was shocked to death. King Nord died in battle. The morale of the Nord Kingdom has collapsed, and it has suffered a disastrous defeat. The battle is over, and the kill value is being integrated, 23,678. Get a 5-star lottery once. Killing points can be used to purchase technology, weapons, and troops in the mall. P.S. Ask for flowers, ask for evaluation tickets, ask for favorites. I want it all. Chapter 5 Design Drawings of MG42 General Purpose Machine Gun. Ask for flowers, please evaluate votes. The remaining enemy troops under the city collapsed completely, leaving behind corpses all over the place and fleeing like crazy. Yuan stood at the top of the city wearing full body plate armor, and he drew out the long sword at his waist. Stop the shelling, the US troops are stationed on the city wall, and everyone else will pursue. Long live His Majesty Yuan. All the knights and soldiers shouted loudly, the city gate opened, and the knights rode out of the city to pursue them. At this moment, there are still more than 30,000 remaining enemy troops, but they have already collapsed. Hundreds of knights chased them out. Not only did they not resist, but they ran away like crazy. They have been completely devastated by artillery fire. Even if they returned to the Kingdom of Nord, it would be impossible for them to become soldiers for the rest of their lives. The roar of heavy machine guns and the indiscriminate bombardment of artillery would become a nightmare for them all their lives. After being caught up, many people squatted down on the spot, expressing that they had surrendered and completely lost their sense of resistance. Here the knights and soldiers went out to capture the prisoners, while Yuan watched the system. Lucky draw. Mall. Technology tree. At this moment, the system only has 3 options, but the technology tree is gray. Is it because he hasn't started to climb technology yet? Yuan first checked the mall. The system mall will regularly refresh 5 items every week, or technology, or weapons, or items, or troops, please check regularly. At this moment your killing value is 23,678. The following are the products refreshed in the mall this week. MG42 General Purpose Machine Gun Design Drawings, price, 15,000. A group of rifle production line workers, 100 people, 100% loyalty, price, 2,000. German Führerguard, 100 guards, 100% loyalty, price, 5,000. 1 Quinjet fighter jet, price, 100,000. Red Police Apocalypse Tank Combat Team, 3 Apocalypse, 50 mobilized soldiers, price, 300,000. Seeing the 5 products displayed on the mall, Yuan took a breath. The Quinjet fighter jet and the Red Police Apocalypse Tank Battle Group are all good things, but let's look at the price again. 100,000, 300,000, no money, leave. Check the MG42 General Purpose Machine Gun Design Drawings, a group of National Internal Affairs Management personnel, and the German Führerguard, and look at the price, 22,000. 22,000, okay, just enough. After confirming the purchase, Yuan's kill value is only 1,678 left. After the purchase, figures appeared on the city wall, and immediately 2 groups of people in a box appeared. A team of German guards wearing pitch-black German military uniforms, long-handled grenades hanging from waist belts, M35 helmets, and MP40 submachine guns appeared in front of Yuan. The other team consisted of 100 workers in gray overalls, both men and women. And in that box were the design drawings of the MG42 General Purpose Machine Gun. All the knights and soldiers went out to capture the prisoners. At this moment, there were only American soldiers on the city wall, and for these people who suddenly appeared, the American soldiers were expressionless and seemed normal. It's just that some of them were slightly moved after seeing those German military uniforms. After all, it was a hostile country during World War II. But it doesn't matter, their thinking has been systematically transformed, and the US company can only exist for 3 days, and will be recycled by the system after 3 days. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes, but it took a long time to chase and capture the prisoners. Your Majesty, we are back. Knight Rhodes knelt down on one knee in front of Yuan with a fanatical tone. How many people were arrested? Yuan asked casually. Under the leadership of His Majesty, our army defeated the enemy army with no casualties. More than 23,000 prisoners have been captured and returned. When Knight Rhodes reported himself, he couldn't believe it. With 1,000 soldiers and more than 100 knights, more than 20,000 people were captured abruptly. And when they approached the enemy, the knights thought they would be resisted. After all, there were still nearly 30,000 enemy troops. Although they were defeated, their number was still 30 times that of their own. But when they got close to the defeated enemy troops, those enemy soldiers either crouched down with their heads covered, trembling all over, and let others slaughter them, or ran away in panic with screams and fear. They seemed to be catching pigs, catching captives all over the mountains and plains. At this moment, Rhodes actually felt an inexplicable fear in his heart. The power of the weapons in the hands of the American soldiers shocked him even more. When he passed by the city, he felt that all this was like a dream. They didn't have a single casualty, but the enemy's corpses were all under the city, and most of them were fragments of corpses. What kind of power is this to create such horror? After thinking about it, Luatus understood. He thought of His Majesty who has been calm since this morning. All this was brought by their Great Majesty, bringing them a hearty victory. Yuan, their Great Majesty, will bring them eternal victory. The more than 20,000 captives were all reduced to slaves and let them dig mines. Yuan waved his hand and said, "There are many natural iron ore and coal mines in Los Angeles. Mining manpower has always been scarce, and most of the iron ore has been surveyed but undeveloped. These mines are resources. By the way, Your Majesty, after we entered the Nord barracks, we also found some strange goods." Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. Rhodes seemed to be remembering something, and the sound from under the helmet was strange. Strange goods. Yuan was puzzled and asked, "What kind of goods?" "This. Your Majesty, please take a look." Rhodes got up and respectfully moved his body away. After the knight walked away, Yuan saw 10 soldiers pushing in some carts at the city gate, and on top of the carts were cages that were half a person tall and covered in black cloth. These things. Yuan stood up and walked over. After getting close, the knights lifted the black cloth Yuan to see what was inside. "I saw petite girls with fearful faces imprisoned in the cage. Nord king or slave trader. He trafficked people." Genichi was stunned, and this idea came to his mind. Trafficking in human beings is a serious crime. The Central Council of the Central Magic Empire ordered the prohibition of human trafficking in the entire continent as early as 20 years ago. But after Yuan squatted down, he realized that none of these girls were human. They all had animal ears on their heads, but they were not big, and they were all locked in cages half the height of a person. When Yuan stood up, he couldn't see the ears on their heads clearly because of the height difference. After squatting down, there was no difference in height, and Yuan knew that these girls were all orcs. P.S. Ask for flowers, ask for evaluation votes. Dear readers, give some flowers and tickets. Or you can leave a comment to let the author know you exist. Chapter 6 Looking at the country, everyone is like a dragon. 1/7. Your Majesty, these half-orc girls, how to arrange it? Rhodes asked. These half-orc girls. Yuan frowned. If these half-orc girls were used as maids, with Genichi's cautious character, he would not dare to put a group of half-orc slaves with unknown origins and details by his side. So, sell it, or, use it as a plaything. Lena's big eyes contained obscure meanings. Her petite body was locked in a cage, and she looked out through the iron bars at a group of tall knights in full-body iron armor. Closing his eyes, the screams of the compatriot before he died and the wild and evil laughter of the human hunting team immediately appeared in his mind. Suffering, killing, perishing. Why did all this befall them half-orcs? Orthodox orcs don't want to see them, and humans take pleasure in capturing and killing them. What the hell did they do wrong? Gritting his teeth tightly, his slender palms suddenly gripped the iron railings, because his palms began to turn pale due to his strength, but the iron railings did not move at all. What a weak force. Because of their weakness, they were captured by human hunting teams, and because of their weakness, they were constantly sold by humans like goods, and they wandered all the way into a huge human army. But in the blink of an eye, that army was defeated, and they were once again treated as goods in the hands of new victors. Then next time, there will definitely be a stronger human army to defeat these people, and then take us away like cargo. Lena was in the cage, with her head lowered, desperate in her heart, and whispered softly in her mouth. The Central Magic Empire forbids human trafficking, but no one ever thought that human beings are life, and so are their half-orcs. No, it won't. Suddenly a young and cold voice sounded in Lena's ear. Lena raised her head abruptly. There was faint hope in her bright silver eyes, but most of them were still fearful. Fear of humans. Yuan squatted down, staring at the little half-orc girl in front of him with a pair of dragon-like eyes. Yuan suddenly felt that this half-orc girl seemed different from other half-orcs. No one will defeat me, let alone my army. You won't be wandering around, being sold here and there like goods. What he said was so absolute, the appraisal was sonorous, and there was incomparably full confidence in his tone. Luotc, arrange it, find some maids to take them, and they will stay in the palace. Yuan got up, turned and left, and said to Rotes. He is the king, and the life and death of these people are all in his mind. Yes, your majesty. Rotes immediately bowed his head in response. This human being is different from others. Lena grasped the railing of the cage with both hands, a pair of bright silver eyes on her pale and tender face suddenly had a certain light at this moment, and she just looked at Yuan who was going away from behind the iron railing. The half-orcs believed in the god of the celestial stars since ancient times, and she could see that Yuan was really different from other humans. The absolute confidence that naturally exudes from the depths of his heart, his personal charm seems to be able to infect other people, and people can't help but believe in him. Your Majesty, the female knight has come to her senses. At this time, a knight came over to report. Oh, she's awake, take it up and talk to her. Yuan took a step and walked towards the city wall again. UB********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************* Genichi went up to the city wall when he heard an angry shout. Looking up, I saw that Lucio was still hanging on a tower, bound by thick iron chains, and even the big knight couldn't break free from the special iron chains. Yuan, if you let me go now, there is still a slight chance of survival, otherwise, I will wait for the iron hooves of my master's army to break through your city gate and cut off your head with a sharp sword. Lucio was suspended in the air, and her body wrapped in a layer of iron armor kept shaking. The vitality of the great knight is really strong, and he can still roar at this time. Yuan felt a little strange looking at the wound on Lucia's abdomen. He was shot in the abdomen, but he didn't expect that Ruthia was still alive after such a long time, and still had the strength to yell. Why is this? Luthia was suspended in the air. She is a great knight. What did Yuan do? With less than 2,000 troops, she easily defeated the 50,000 army of the Nord Kingdom. Luthia naturally saw the countless corpses of the army of the Nord Kingdom that had not been cleaned up under the city wall. What a mighty power this is! Without the hundreds of magician combat corps, it would be impossible to cause such damage. Ruthia was puzzled why the king of a small country would have such strength. Knock her out and put her in the dungeon. From then on, she is a dead person, a great knight, and she is too loyal to the Duke of Golden Lion to be used by us. However, what a good research material this is. Yuan waved his hand and ordered. Your Majesty, where is the Duke of Golden Lion? A knight beside him said with some doubts. As far as I know, the Duke of Golden Lion has always been a person who reacts slowly. The Gutongxi Empire is some distance away from us, and then responds to the Duke of Golden Lion. When he finds out that something is wrong and sends troops to fight, maybe half a year will pass. Half a year is enough. Yuan smiled, stood still and drew the long sword around his waist. Your Majesty, we are now at war with the Kingdom of Nord. We have just defeated their main force, but they still have a lot of remaining troops near our land. At this time, we will provoke the Duke of Golden Lion. There was incomparable worry in the knight's tone. You don't understand, all of this is different because of me. The Nord Kingdom is nothing, they are about to collapse. I never regarded them as our opponents. Looking at the sharp and bright long sword emitting a cold light under the sun, a cold light flashed in Yuan's eyes. Our country is too small, but how vast is this continent? The total population is more than tens of billions. And how much is the population of our country? Only 500,000. We need wars to expand our territory through wars. The plan requires at least a huge empire with a population of hundreds of millions to support it. With a flash of the long sword's edge, Yuan threw the sword out, rubbed the knight's side, and pierced deeply into the city wall with a clang sound. The knight opened his eyes wide, shocked from the bottom of his heart by His Majesty's bold words. Your Majesty wants to plan the entire continent with the power of their own country. Sword, it's time to get rid of it. This era will end with me. Yuan's leaving back was deeply reflected in the knight's pupils, and the powerful and confident words were also deeply reflected in the knight's heart like a spiritual imprint. Swear allegiance to His Majesty the King. The knight suddenly knelt down on one knee and roared with all his strength. Their king should be such a hero. Has the 98K rifle production line been installed? In the process of installation, please select a location for the installation of 10 steam engines. The technology tree is officially opened, the dawn of industry has officially begun, there is no limit to people, and there is no limit to technology. Your Majesty, please continue to work hard, look forward to the country, everyone is like a dragon. P.S. The author decided to update 14,000 words every day, 7 more. This is the first update today. P.S. The previous update conditions will be changed for the time being and will not be updated for the time being. Look at the support of readers. Readers, please support this book a lot. Chapter 7 Still need to increase taxes. 2/7 ask for flowers. Ask for an evaluation ticket. The Kingdom of Ross is located on the border of the western regions of the Laurelland continent. There are 3 kingdoms around the Kingdom of Ross, the Kingdom of Nord, the Kingdom of Kizi, and the Kingdom of Loth. The Kingdom of Loth is close to the sea at the very edge, the Kingdom of Nord and the Kingdom of Loth are next to the Kingdom of Loth to the east, and the Kingdom of Kizi is to the east of the Kingdom of Nord. And one point of the border of the Kizi Kingdom is connected to the prairie of the Southern Orc Empire. And to the east of the Kizi Kingdom, there are hundreds of principalities of the western region kingdoms controlled by the Gutongsi Empire. These hundreds of kingdoms of the western regions are controlled by the ancient Tongsi the Great, and this ambitious emperor controls these kingdoms to form the ancient Tongsi Empire. It is not so much an empire as a monolithic alliance empire. The Duke of the Golden Lion is a warlord of the Gutongsi Alliance Empire, with an army of millions. This alliance empire with a population of hundreds of millions and a vast territory with hundreds of kingdoms blocked the way for all countries in the western regions to reach the Magic Empire in the central region. After the Gutongsi Empire is the Central Territory, the Council of the Central Magic Empire is the largest force in the entire continent. There are several magic kingdoms around the Central Magic Empire Councilor Court. As for the southern region, it is a prairie, occupied by several orc kingdoms and some half-orc tribes. As for the northern territory and the eastern territory, the ancient Genichi didn't know anything about it. Please select a location for the production line. The list of resources required has been listed. The installation of the production line requires the following resources. Please collect them, Your Majesty. Yuan was sitting in his palace, not far away were the guards and knights standing in line. And Rhodes was sent by him to lead the American soldiers to conquer the lost land nearby. After all, there are still more than 10 towns in the country controlled by the Nord Kingdom. This is really only one city at the beginning. Steward Stevens, how many gold coins are there in the treasury? While looking at the list of required resources listed by the system, Genichi asked the palace steward standing next to him. Your Majesty, because of the war with the Nord Kingdom this year, and the loss of most of the country, the tax cannot be collected, and the military expenditure is not small. Now there are only 20,000 gold coins left in the treasury. Stevens has a ledger in his hand anytime and anywhere. He took out the ledger to look through it a few times, and said with a bitter face. Only 20,000 gold coins, so little. Yuan sighed, no money, too poor. No way, because the Nord Kingdom is at war with us. Call out 15,000 gold coins to collect the materials on this list. Yuan handed the list to Stevens. Your Majesty, this is. Stevens was taken aback. He glanced at the list and couldn't understand why Yuan used the remaining money in the national treasury to buy all these things that seemed useless to him. How much domestic iron resources are left? Yuan asked. Because of the war with the Nord Kingdom, the trade route was cut off, so there is still a lot of iron in the treasury. If they are all made into armor, they can completely arm an army of nearly 10,000 people. Stevens looked at the records in the ledger and said to Yuan. Very good. Yuan smiled. I want to open a new factory, you go and collect all the resources on the list. It's all. Your Majesty, if this is the case, I am afraid there will be nothing left in our treasury. Stevens was taken aback and said, if there is nothing left, there will be nothing left, don't make me say it a second time. Yuan took a deep look at Stevens. Stevens shuddered. After a war, will people change so much? He still remembers Yuan's appearance when he was a child, but looking at him now, he is obviously alone, but it feels like two different people. The previous Yuan seemed cowardly and uninitiated. But since His Majesty ascended the throne, Yuan has shown his sharpness now, like a giant dragon that wants to devour the world. But for the country, the king they need is undoubtedly the latter. By the way, go and help me gather all the gates of the country in the central square of the city. I have a new decree to announce. Yuan asked. All summoned. Stevens was taken aback. Yes, anyway, we only have this city left now, and we must gather them all. Some decrees will only be believed if I, the king, say it myself. Yuan stood up, and he looked handsome and straight after he had changed into a court attire. Have you heard? His Majesty the King is going to call us all to the central square, saying that there is a new decree to be announced. A new decree? Is there another tax increase? On the street, a person screamed. What, tax increase? Life is already very hard. If the tax is increased, then we will not be able to survive. The other person had a haggard face and spoke very bitterly. These hateful nobles only exploit us, they are all bloody vampires. Some people on the street were filled with righteous indignation and said bitterly. Okay, don't talk more, let's go to the square quickly, and listen to what the king is going to do. Since he took office, our taxes have been increasing. The citizens rushed towards the central square of the city in a steady stream. After a while, tens of thousands of people gathered here. Most of them looked haggard and full of worry. After all, in their hearts, I am afraid that there will be another tax increase. Because of the war, their taxation was already very heavy, and various miscellaneous taxes were frequently added before. Garbage tax, window tax, water tax, food tax, etc., etc. And all the money collected went there, all used to build weapons and armor, and went to war with the Nord Kingdom. But the army failed again and again. Taxation is also heavy again and again. The people are already overwhelmed. Up to now, 78 out of 10 of the citizens' income have all been paid in taxes. Fortunately, this time is not long, otherwise, after a while, Yuan will receive the news of the rebellion of the residents in the city. But it's not much better now. Yuan called the citizens to the square. Many citizens thought that he wanted to raise taxes again, so they were very angry. A large number of people gathered, and several brawls had occurred in this moment. Thousands of soldiers present managed to control the order of the scene with great difficulty. Dear citizens of Laos, I am your king, Yuan. Yuan was dressed in royal court clothes, surrounded by knights and German guards. He stood on the high platform and said loudly. Because of the special structure of the square, there are loudspeakers all around, so Yuan's voice can be heard clearly. My respected Majesty the King, what do you want to do? Do you want to increase taxes? Although we are only civilians, we are also human beings. A commoner couldn't bear the resentment in his heart any longer, and roared loudly. P.S. Ask for flowers. Ask for an evaluation ticket. Chapter 8. What the people want. AC technology lights up. 3/7 ask for flowers, ask for evaluation votes. Yeah, you still treat us as human beings. Originally, our taxes are heavy, and we are barely able to survive. If we have to increase taxes this month, then we will not be able to live at all. The tax was just increased a few days ago. If it is increased now, I am afraid it will really stir up civil uprisings and cause rebellion. Tens of thousands of people in the square were furious. They shouted loudly, and some even seemed very excited. Yuan believed that if he really said the words of tax increase, there would really be a rebellion. But today, he didn't come here to raise taxes. Quiet. The ancient Genichi roared. Hundreds of knights around shouted in unison, and the sheathed swords in their hands slammed on the ground, making a cacophony of noises. Constantly reverberating in this square space. For a moment, the voices of hundreds of knights overwhelmed the tens of thousands of people. Dear citizens of Ross, when did I say that taxes will be raised? Yuan stood on the high platform, his eyes constantly scanning the restless elements among the citizens below. I declare that you will be exempted from all taxes this year. Yuan's words instantly silenced all the angry people. Because of the special structure of the square, and because Yuan himself has the strength of a knight, Yuan's words were clearly heard by everyone. What? I heard that right. A citizen was stunned, and he stared blankly at his friend next to him. The king not only does not raise taxes, but also gives us tax exemption. Real or fake? This. Tens of thousands of people looked at each other and whispered to each other. Not only the people were stunned, but even the knights and soldiers guarding the side were also stunned. Duty-free. They also suspect that their ears have misheard. Originally, these knights and soldiers were all nervous, and they were ready to suppress the rebellion. Some soldiers are even ready to rebel with the people if Yuan speaks out about tax increases. You heard me right. Not only will I not raise taxes, but I will also exempt you from all taxes this year. Not only this year, but tomorrow's taxes will also be unprecedentedly light. Yuan stood in front of tens of thousands of people, with his hands behind his back. No wonder the country of Ross is weak and small. When the previous kings of the country of Ross were around, the tax burden on the shoulders of the people was not light. There is also some aristocratic exploitation. But now because of the war, everyone thinks that when the Ross Congress fell, all the nobles in the country fled, leaving only Yuan who had just ascended the throne and some knights who were loyal to the royal family. After reading the domestic tax reports, Yuan even thought it was miraculous that the rebellion hadn't happened yet. However, 78 out of 10 of the taxes have only been added recently, and if it is delayed for a while, there will really be a civil uprising. Of course Yuan wants to stop these things. Yuan wants to carry out reforms, thorough reforms. The first thing to do is to start with taxes. And if there is no taxation, where will the money for state support come from? Yuan has his own way. The lack of money in Los Angeles does not mean that other countries have no money. There are so many countries in the world, and there is no shortage of rich countries. They are Yuan's targets, but the Nord Kingdom is the first to bear the brunt. Not only do I want to be exempt from taxes, but I also want to announce that I will cut off all the privileges of the nobility. Only one false title will be left, and there will be no nobles in our country of Ross except the king. Yuan dropped another bombshell. What? How can this be? Exempt all the privileges of the nobles, that is to say, there will be no noble masters in the future. What does His Majesty want? No, so we will never be exploited by nobles again. No longer have to endure the exploitation of nobles. It was like dropping a bomb in a pool of stagnant water, and the water surged suddenly. Countless citizens whispered to each other, they didn't understand what Yuan wanted to do at all. The reason why Yuan wanted to do this was because apart from him, the king, there were indeed no other nobles in the country, and the other nobles had all run away when only the city of Los was left in the kingdom of Ross. The remaining knights are of course also nobles, but they belong to the royal family, and they are both prosperous and injurious with the royal family, so this decree will not affect them. Abandoning such a decree, Yuan is sure to gain a lot of popular support. People's opinion value is unlocked. Obtain popularity value, 53,642. The People's Livelihood Technology tree is opened, and the popularity value can light up the People's Livelihood Technology at the People's Livelihood Technology tree. People's Livelihood Science and Technology complement each other with the Military Science and Technology tree. Unlocked a new tech tree. This wave is not bad. Yuan was excited. People's Livelihood Technology is also crucial, and how many military can be derived from People's Livelihood Technology. It can be said that People's Livelihood Technology and military technology have always complemented each other and influenced each other. With People's Livelihood Technology, Yuan can point out more military technology along the way. The alternating current has been unlocked. Do you want to use the alternating current technology with the power of 20,000 people's hearts? Alternating current series derivatives related to People's Livelihood Technology design has been unlocked. do you use 30,000 people's hearts to buy? Buy. Yuan was determined, and he gave the order. The purchase is successful, the technology has been cashed in, and 10 technical workers have appeared, and they will be waiting for His Majesty in the palace. No internal combustion engine. Yuan was a little disappointed. The internal combustion engine needs steam engine technology to light up. Please continue to work hard, Your Majesty. There would be no internal combustion engine without the internal combustion engine. Yuan came back to his senses, and what he heard in his ears were the cheers of tens of thousands of people in the square. Long live Your Majesty! Long live His Majesty the King! Countless people shouted loudly, causing people's ears to ring. Ordinary people at the bottom are like this. Whoever treats them well is the object of their allegiance. Compared with other countries, is there a king who exempts the people from taxes? No. Yuan is a special case, the only one. Your Majesty, you have abolished all the privileges of the nobility in the country. If it is spread, it may cause dissatisfaction in other countries. After all, the aristocracy is a class that has existed on the mainland for thousands or even tens of thousands of years. Next to Yuan, Stevens said with some concern. Don't be afraid, what I want to create is a brand new country. In my country, there will be no aristocratic oppression, and the common people will be happy and healthy and live in harmony. What I want to change is this world. Yuan's heart was full of pride, he waved his hands and replied. A brand new country that is free from the oppression of nobles, happy and healthy. Stevens was stunned. What a great idea this is. Such a country must be great. Can the kingdom of Ross really reach this level? By the way, how about the collection of those resources? Yuan asked. The arrangement has been made. All kinds of businessmen have been found. Your Majesty, the factory you want to open will start soon. Those businessmen have no distinction between countries, they only have money in their eyes. When Stevens said businessmen, he was very disgusted. Businessman, go and make arrangements, I want to meet those businessmen. There was a smile on Yuan's face. Now the country is asking for money. Those businessmen are getting richer and richer. It's time to deal with them. P.S. The third update, ask for flowers. Ask for an evaluation ticket. There are 4 more today. I beg all the readers to give some flowers and tickets. The written grade of this book is a bit poor, but the author will keep writing. Chapter 9 Betraying National Interests, Death Penalty. 4/7. What on earth is King Yuan going to do? Call is here in a hurry. HMPH, that kid Yuan is probably at the end of his rope. Maybe we need to donate money to him. In the reception room of the palace, several businessmen in various poses sat at the table. They were all dressed in luxurious clothes, and they were well built. The people of this country are very thin and emaciated one by one. But they are very rich and free. Hey, Yuan asked me to buy a lot of things today. I usually sell them all at the bottom of the box, but I didn't expect the king, Yuan, to buy them. I blackmailed him for a lot of money, a full 15,000 gold coins. A fat man with a beard said with a smile. There was no respect for the king Yuan in his words. Yuan is the king, but in their opinion, the kingdom of Loss is almost over. Although they are Ross people, they are also well-known and successful businessmen in the surrounding countries, and they have obtained a lot of wealth by dumping the resources in Ross. This time, it is the opportunity of the war to make a fortune for the country. In their eyes, the country of Ross is about to perish. If they can make a fortune, they will make as much money as they can, and then they will run away. What does the survival of the country of Ross matter to them? Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. There is no national boundary in their eyes, only money is their everything. Ha 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 ha. Hearing what the fat bearded businessman said, the others laughed out loud. If Yuan asks us to donate money, that's fine, we'll exchange it for land. Anyway, the country of Ross is almost finished now. Without our donation, Yuan might not even be able to survive this month. Don't worry if he disagrees. There is a textile factory owned by the country of Ross outside the city. That's a good business. Another thin, narrow-eyed businessman sneered. Yes, that's how it should be. The other businessmen also nodded, thoughtful, constantly thinking about how much profit they could exploit in the hands of the dying Ross kingdom. Everyone, anyway, we are also considered losers. Would it be too much to do so? A middle-aged businessman pondered for a moment, then said to the others. Lost country, HMPH, the nobles are in power. Do those people in Ross country treat people other than nobles as human beings? With so many surrounding countries, the nobles of Ross country are probably the most exploitative of civilians. I hate those nobles to the core. There was hatred in the eyes of the fat-bearded businessman. But I just heard that the king of Ross has abolished the privileges of all nobles in Ross, leaving only empty titles. The middle-aged businessman pondered and said. What? How dare the king Yuan do that? He's dying. As soon as this statement came out, the businessmen around were shocked. Protecting the interests of the aristocracy has been an unwritten rule in the Laureland mainland for countless years. Anyone who dares to interfere with the interests of the aristocratic class will become the public enemy of the aristocrats of the Laureland mainland. And Yuan dared to abolish all the privileges of the nobility in the country of Ross. Although it was not the abolition of the nobility, it was the same as the abolition of the nobility. This time, I am afraid that some ancient aristocratic kingdoms will not be able to bear this tone and directly go to war against the kingdom of Ross. HMPH, now that the situation is like this, the country of Ross is not short of such an opponent. The fat-bearded businessman sneered. Other businessmen also suddenly realized, too, at this time, the country of Ross is almost dying, and it is the same if there is another opponent. Let's just wait for the country of Ross to die. If we go to the Kingdom of Nord to donate military expenses to Rag IV at this time, do you think he will make me a Viscount Dang Dang? If he can't get a fief in the country of Ross, in the future that's how you become a nobleman, ha 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 ha. The skinny businessman laughed loudly. The battle with the army of the Nord Kingdom took place in the morning, and they arrived in Ross City in the afternoon. The battle was too fast, so they didn't know that the main force of the Nord Kingdom had been wiped out by Ross. You want to be a nobleman of the Nord Kingdom? Well, you can go down to accompany Rag IV soon. Suddenly a voice full of chills sounded, and all the businessmen present couldn't help but tremble. All the merchants looked towards the door, only to see Genichi standing at the door in Chinese clothes and looking at them with a sneer. Yuan, don't be too arrogant, I mean what you said just now, what can you do? A trace of disdain flashed in the slender eyes of the skinny businessman. He stood up and faced Yuan directly. You, a king who is about to destroy the country, what can you do to me? Very well, is there anyone among you who thinks like him? Yuan walked in, Rulong's eyes glanced around coldly. The other businessmen didn't speak, because they instinctively felt that something was wrong, but there was a trace of disapproval in their eyes. Just be careful they didn't stand up like the skinny businessman. Businessman Clover Macaulay, fornicating the Nord Kingdom, betraying national interests, death penalty. Yuan stood with his hands behind his back, and said in a cold voice. The German guards armed with MP-40 submachine guns rushed in immediately. Don't think that the temporarily retreated Nord army will be proud. Yuan, try to move me if you have the ability. Just because these ordinary people who are not even knights want to take me down. The skinny businessman sneered and glanced at the soldiers of the German guard with disdain. The 4 knight-powered guards around him took a step forward, looking at Yuan with fierce eyes. Because he didn't know the result of the battle that took place in the morning, the skinny businessman thought that the Nord army was only temporarily repelled. After all, Yuan has only 1,000 troops, while the main force of the Nord Kingdom has more than 50,000 troops. It is impossible to be wiped out by Yuan. Moreover, the skinny businessman's property is mainly in other towns in Laos, and those towns are still in the hands of the Nord Kingdom, so he is naturally not afraid of Yuan. Everyone, let me give you a present. Genichi beckoned, and a guard soldier immediately took a box and just opened it in front of everyone's eyes. The box opened slowly, and the eyes of all the merchants moved over unconsciously. Yuan, you want to please with gifts. The skinny businessman hadn't finished speaking when he suddenly saw what was inside the box. At this moment, his whole body was icy cold, and a chill shot straight from his tailbone to his heart. How is this possible? There was disbelief in the thin and slender eyes of the thin businessman, and he screamed tremblingly. Inside the box was the head of Raj IV, King of Nord. Immediately, all the businessmen felt a chill in their hearts. King Nord, killed by Gu Yuan. The Nord army. Yes, just this morning, the Nord army has been wiped out by our army. This is the head of King Nord. Gu Yuan looked at them with a smile on his face. It's just that in their eyes, the smile on Gu Yuan's face is terrifying no matter how you look at it. The next moment, a pistol suddenly appeared in Gu Yuan's hand. P.S. Ask for flowers. Ask for an evaluation ticket. Give more votes. Dear readers. Chapter 10 Your Majesty, I will offer 500,000 gold coins. 5/7. Boom, 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 boom. A loud noise shook the ears of the merchants present. All the merchants looked in shock, only to see that the skinny merchant and his 4 night guards had a blood hole in their heads, and their brains were protruding. Those who were already dead could not die anymore. The corpse fell to the ground, twitched twice, and then remained completely motionless. This. All the merchants gasped. With shock in his eyes, what did Gu Yuan do just now? Killed 4 people with the strength of knights in an instant. These are the 4 knights. Businessman Clover Macaulay, betraying national interests, collaborating with the enemy, capital punishment, executed immediately. Gu Yuan retracted the pistol that was still smoking, and scanned the group of businessmen in front of him. All the properties owned by his family were taken back to the state to use as military funds. Now that the jumping bugs are cleared, let's get down to business. Gu Yuan sat on the main seat, and the guard soldiers dragged away the 5 corpses and cleaned up the ground. The merchants looked at the clean ground. If they didn't know what happened just now, no one would have known that 4 knights died on the spot in just such an instant. Until now, the merchants looked at Gu Yuan unconsciously with a touch of fear in their eyes. They also noticed the gun that Gu Yuan used just now and the submachine gun hanging on the bodyguard soldiers. What is that terrifying weapon? Could it be that King Gu Yuan wiped out the 50,000 Nord army with that kind of weapon? Don't be an enemy of the king. Never. With this terrible weapon, 4 knights can be killed in an instant, which seems to be a lot. These businessmen have never heard of this weapon, but because of this, they understand the horror of this weapon. I'm afraid there will be a revolution in this world. The middle-aged businessman muttered to himself. It may take more than 10 years of hard work for a knight to become a knight, but just now when Gu Yuan used that weapon, he could kill 4 knights in an instant. I don't know if there is any limit to using that weapon. An ordinary person with no power to restrain a chicken can also use that weapon to kill a knight who has trained hard for at least 10 years. All businessmen dare not think about it anymore, because it is really terrible. After a while, all the businessmen calmed down and talked about business. All they needed was calmness. You all know that I'm here to discuss business with you. Gu Yuan looked at them and said slowly. Your Majesty, just tell me how much money we need to donate. I will donate 5,000 gold coins to the national treasury. Please don't dislike it, Your Majesty. With a smirk on his face, the fat-bearded businessman stretched out 5 fingers and said. Hey, you are so generous, you earned 15,000 gold coins from me today, and now you donate another 5,000 to me. How generous you are. Gu Yuan leaned on the back of the chair and smiled. Look at what you said, Your Majesty. As a loyal and patriotic businessman, I should be like this. Looking at Gu Yuan's smile, the fat-bearded businessman was sweating down his back. The body of the emaciated businessman just now was lying next to him, and the fat beard with brains inside could be clearly seen. The fat-bearded businessman naturally didn't want to be like that. It's just that his face is completely different from when Gu Yuan hadn't come in at the beginning. I donate 2,000. I donate 3,000. The remaining 7 or 8 merchants raised 50,000 gold coins to Gu Yuan in just a short while. Gu Yuan laughed. Of course his appetite was more than the 50,000 gold coins. Guys, I want you to see something. Gu Yuan said. Here, Your Majesty, let's see what it is later. Hearing what Gu Yuan said, the blood of other businessmen turned cold. Just now, they were asked to look at something, but they saw a human head, and then there were 5 more corpses on the ground in the blink of an eye. Naturally, they dare not talk about this topic with Gu Yuan. Crack. Gu Genichi clapped his hands, and two guard soldiers, one holding something and the other pushing a cart, came in. Immediately, the eyes of all businessmen were attracted. After seeing that it was not a human head or other dangerous and scary things, they were obviously relieved, but the next moment they wondered again, what are these two things? It looks very strange. Everyone, please take a look. Gu Yuan stretched out his hand to touch the strange creation with glass-like things, and the whole room lit up instantly. It's like daytime. Silk. Immediately, all the businessmen couldn't help closing their eyes. Some dazzling. This is a magical creation. A businessman was shocked. No, this is not a magical creation. This thing is called an electric light. When measured at night, it can illuminate the surroundings like daytime. Gu Yuan shook his head and smiled. Moreover, this thing can be built in batches and on a large scale. And the cost is much lower than magical creations. Gu Yuan's words made these businessmen completely excited. What does this sentence mean? They are all top businessmen who monopolize one industry in more than 10 surrounding countries. They all know that this means huge business opportunities. It can be manufactured in batches, and the cost is much lower than that of magic creations. That is to say, they can sell this thing for the price of magic creations, but the cost is much lower than that of magic creations. This means that they will be able to make several times the profit on this thing. There is a saying that goes well, if there is a 20% profit, capital will be eager to move. If there is a 50% profit, capital will take risks. If there is a 100% profit, capital will dare to take risks. The danger of hanging. If there is a 300% profit, capital dares to trample on all laws in the world. And Gu Yuan just happened to be able to bring them this 300% profit. I can continue to sell this item to you, allowing you to sell it to other countries. Next, let's discuss the issue of the monopoly of this product in neighboring countries. There is also the issue of your shareholding and dividends. Gu Yuan's words completely made these businessmen go crazy. I offer 100,000 gold coins. Your Majesty, I want to buy the right to sell this item. The fat bearded businessman was like crazy, roaring with red eyes. 100,000 gold coins, are you dreaming? Do you know how much a lighting magic creation is worth on the market now? One is nearly 1,000 gold coins. This thing can be manufactured on a large scale. Even if it is sold cheaper, it will still be a huge profit. Do you know what it means? This is a business with a long history. In the true sense, it can last for a lifetime, or even a few lifetimes. Your Majesty, I offer 200,000 gold coins. Another businessman also stood up and bid like crazy. 500,000. Ladies and gentlemen, I can take out all my family assets, and please save face. Bah, you don't care about your face. You want to monopolize it all by yourself. You also want to get shares and dividends from His Majesty. Don't even think about it, the meat is for everyone to eat together. Everyone, don't worry, there is one more thing here. Gu Yuan smiled, and pointed to the small cart-like thing. P.S. There are 2 more updates today. P.S. Dear readers, please leave your comments, and let the author know that the author is not on a standalone machine, and send more flowers and tickets. Chapter 11 Incomparable Huge Profits. 2.94 million gold coins. 6/7. There's one more thing. When Gu Yuan said this, the merchants immediately became a little quieter, but they were still a little ready to move. Just the previous creation called the electric light can make them an unknown number of times the profit, so how much profit can the next one, which is slightly larger, bring them? Thinking about it this way, almost all businessmen are drooling. And Gu Yuan told them that the light uses batteries as energy, and they can make a fortune selling batteries in the future. How about this, let's auction off the sales monopoly rights of the members of the Gustone Alliance Empire. The first is the monopoly auction rights of the richest and most affluent ancient stone capital in the 12 surrounding countries. The starting price is 200,000 gold coins. Gu Yuan sat on the chair and waved his hands, scanning the circle of businessmen. 250,000 gold coins. The fat bearded businessman stood up with red eyes and shouted. Yuris, what are you? I'll offer 300,000 gold coins. The other businessman immediately shouted with a red neck. The ancient stone capital and the 12 surrounding countries are the closest to the Central Magic Empire Council. Although there are overflowing magic creations there, only there are the richest and most willing to spend money on magic creations. If anyone can monopolize the sales rights of where to go, at least 10 times the money can be earned back. 350,000. I'll offer $500,000. Just for a while, the price stopped when it reached 800,000 gold coins. The one who bought the monopoly right to the 12 countries around the capital of ancient stone was a businessman named Mickey Dunbar. He was also from Ross, and his industries spread all over the surrounding countries. He was the most powerful businessman. And the others didn't want to offend him. They knew that besides the 12 kingdoms around King Gutongsi's capital, there were many other rich places, so they didn't make money with him in the end. When Dunbar bought the monopoly rights, his face was full of smiles, and he was also the only one in the room who had an estate in King Gutong's. After the sales monopoly rights of hundreds of member states of the Gutongsi Alliance Empire were divided up by these 7 merchants, Gu Yuan discovered that the gold coins that these merchants would pay him later turned out to be as high as 2.8 million. Gu Yuan was overwhelmed. What these merchants bought was the monopoly rights they had stipulated. He could only manufacture electric lights, and the cost Gu Yuan knew well. The cost of such an electric light did not exceed 2 gold coins. Then you get the goods from me, and the price will be based on 200 gold coins each. What do you guys think? Gu Yuan looked around blankly, looking at these businessmen. 200 gold coins. Can you? These businessmen habitually wanted to bargain, but when they saw Gu Yuan staring at them and the submachine guns in the hands of the soldiers at the gate, they had a nervous fight, but they still didn't speak. Even if the purchase price is 200 gold coins, then if they sell it to nobles, they can sell at least 800 gold coins. 4 times the profit, maybe more, but they got 4 times the profit, while Gu Yuan got 100 times the profit. After all, it only costs 2 gold coins to make a light bulb. When technology comes up in the future, this cost can be reduced, even down to 1 silver coin. This is 1,000 times profit. That's it. For the time being, we are only selling around the Gustone Alliance Empire. After Gu Yuan signed the agreement with them, confirmed the quantity they purchased and the prepaid payment, Gu Yuan stood up. Please go back and prepare the payment, and come to pick up the goods in 15 days. His Majesty. These businessmen look at me and I look at you, but they don't move. How? Gu Yuan frowned. The power of a superior person naturally radiated from him. These merchants boldly said, Your Majesty, isn't there one more thing? You mean that thing? It's just shown to you temporarily. Your money should be invested in my lamp for the time being. Gu Yuan said. That's true. These businessmen are a little embarrassed. After you sell it for the first time and come back successfully, and you have new funds, let's talk about the remaining thing. Gu Yuan smiled and sat on the chair leisurely. Yes, yes. The merchants left one after another, and went back to prepare money. Starting today, an 8-person business interest group headed by the Kingdom of Ross is officially established. Gu Yuan asked 7 businessmen to work for him with the smallest price, and he took the most money. Where can such a good thing be found? And not afraid of their repentance, the agreement Gu Yuan signed with them was a commercial document issued by the Council of Central Magic Empire Councilors and the Roarland Business Union. Anyone who dares to violate the regulations will be jointly punished by the Tingwei, a member of the Central Magic Empire, and the Roarland Business Union. 2,800,000, plus the money for each of the 7 people to buy 100 units to test the water, a total of 2,094,000 gold coins. Now there is money to open a large-scale arsenal. Gu Yuan's heart blossomed. Although the system gave him technology, he had to pay for the resources and the opening of factories. As for the second thing Gu Yuan took out, it was actually a loom. The work efficiency of this kind of thing is more than 10 times that of manual work. Having this kind of thing is also a huge profit. One day later, at the location chosen by Gu Yuan himself, a military center was set up in a separate area outside the city. First, an arsenal, an electric light factory, and a battery factory were opened. Make 98K rifles and MG42 general-purpose machine guns. The workers are all system personnel. The system previously provided 100 workers and 10 Minsheng technology workers, which is barely enough, but the output is a little slower. Yuan also dispatched his King's Guard, German Guard, with 50 guards. The large-scale opening of arsenals and the increase in production have to wait for the money from these merchants to arrive. P.S. Ask for all the data. Dear readers, let's give a ticket for the sake of the author's 7 updates every day. That is, you can cast at will. P.S. Chapter 6, there is another chapter today. Chapter 12, I must cut off Yuan's head. 7/7. P.S. The 7 chapters are finally updated today, and the 7 chapters will be updated tomorrow. Readers, please support us a lot. 3 days later. Boom. With a loud bang, the table in the conference room shattered and splashed around. The surrounding Nord knights in full body armor remained motionless. Shards of the table clattered against their armor. But they didn't dare to move at all. 50,000 troops. I just came back from the Gutongxi Empire today, and you guys told me this news. The 50,000 troops led by my father. Just like that, they were all defeated. They only had 1,000 people. The knights only had 100 people. Nord Prince Ragnar roared angrily, and no one in the entire Nord meeting room dared to speak, only his roaring voice kept echoing. The 3 soldiers kneeling on the ground were in a state of distress. Their bodies were trembling uncontrollably, and sweat dripped drop by drop from their foreheads. Your Highness, they have magicians. His Majesty the King also. One of the 3 soldiers dared to answer loudly, but before he finished speaking, Prince Nord came to him like the wind, grabbed his collar and lifted him up. You said what happened to the father? The soldier met Ragnar's eyes suddenly. Ragnar's eyes were red, like a beast about to eat people. We didn't see His Majesty when we were defeated. It's very likely His Majesty. The soldier was sweating profusely and said tremblingly. Impossible. Ragnar suddenly sat down on the ground with a sad expression on his face. Yuan, if I don't kill you, I swear I won't be human. A roar seemed to break the roof of the meeting room, and the sound was shrill and miserable, like crying blood. Send a letter to King Lot, inviting them to join the army in the kingdom of Loth. If they don't send troops, they won't give my teacher face. Ragnar suppressed the anger in his heart, and said to the attendants beside him. Ragnar. At this time, a sigh suddenly sounded at the door of the conference room. Teacher. Why are you here? Shocked, Ragnar stood up and quickly helped the old man who came in. This old man, named Leander, is a magician in the capital of the Gutongxi Alliance Empire. Ragnar was sent to study in the Gutongxi Alliance Empire by Rag IV when he was young, and he just came back today. The kingdom of Nalos has found some wild mages from somewhere. In order to ensure your victory in the expedition, you should also take the escort team that accompanied me. Leander looked at Ragnar kindly. This is the most outstanding student, and his favorite student. Thank you, teacher. Ragnar was overjoyed. Natu bowed. We don't talk about this between master and apprentice. Leander waved his hand, turned and left. Yuan, you're not dead this time. After Leander left, Ragnar's eyes were full of hatred. The hatred of killing one's father is irreconcilable. This time, he gathered the power of the whole country and invited the kingdom of Loth to send troops to the kingdom of Ross. Under the pressure of his teacher, the kingdom of Lot dared not spare no effort. Ragnar is ambitious, 12 magicians, 3 great knights, plus the army of the kingdom of Lot. The 2 countries work together, a total of 1,200 knights, a full army of 100,000. Half a month later, they will go to the kingdom of Ross, and they must capture the city of Ross, and must cut off Yuan's head to pay homage to his father's spirit in heaven. Lo's city. Your Majesty, fortunately, we did not disgrace our orders. With the joint efforts of the remaining troops in the land, we recovered a total of 7 towns in 3 days. We are only 6 towns away from recovering the entire land. Your Majesty, the magic weapon held by the mercenary you invited is really powerful. I have never seen such a weapon in my life. It can instantly kill a knight with 1 blow. Rotes returned to Los Angeles with the army, and when he saw Yuan, he said very excitedly. Yuan nodded. Rotes, come and see this. Ji Yuan beckoned, and at this moment Rhodes realized that Ji Yuan was actually holding a long object in his hand, which looked similar in shape to those held by those mercenaries. Rhodes got excited, he got up immediately and took the 98k from Ji Yuan. This is the period during which the arsenal established by Ji Yuan was in full swing, and the funds from those businessmen have also arrived one after another in the past 3 days. So yesterday Ji Yuan opened 10 more arsenals. However, related equipment is still under construction. Moreover, there is a serious shortage of workers, so it is difficult to increase production for a while. Now only 298k and 5 MG42 general-purpose machine guns can be produced at most a day. Our country is still too small. A larger territory and a larger population are needed. Ji Yuan sighed. Your Majesty, this subordinate will not hesitate to die. Upon hearing Ji Yuan's words, Rhodes immediately knelt down on one knee and said loudly, Your Majesty, I just received the news from the spies that the Nord Kingdom is gathering all their troops. I'm afraid this will exhaust their national strength, and the Lot Kingdom's troops are also frequently mobilized. This is not a good sign. I am afraid that the Kingdom of Nord and the Kingdom of Lot will join forces to attack us. This time I predict that their strength may be around 100,000, but we may only have 2,000 troops now. Stevens came over at this time, saluted Ji Yuan respectfully, and said, Well done. A gleam flashed in Ji Yuan's eyes, he stood with his hands behind his back, and laughed. The distance and speed of the march of the two kingdoms, armies are doomed that they will not come too fast, at least half a month. And Ji Yuan can take advantage of this half month to train. Although it's only 15 days, it's not a problem to train their Q and fire and reload. The training time is short and the accuracy is not enough. So let 2,000 soldiers form a group and use a 98k bolt-action rifle to play in line and shoot. Not to mention machine guns. As long as the firepower density is enough, no matter how many people they come, they will still give away their heads. Chapter 13 Recruit Training, Tough Soldiers. 1/7. P.S. Today's update starts. This is the first update, readers, please hand over your tickets. Line up. With a loud roar, 3,000 recruits and veterans lined up one by one in the square. How many times have I said this? I can't even stand upright. Stand up straight. An instructor acting as a German guard soldier went up and kicked a bent recruit. I'm sorry, sir. The recruit was kicked, his face became tense and he immediately stood up straight, for fear of being punished. How many times have I told you to call the instructor? I am not a nobleman. In the future, there will only be officers in the army, no masters. The instructor had a gloomy face and reprimanded loudly. It's the instructor. 3,000 soldiers, including 1,000 veterans and 2,000 new recruits. Fortunately, the veterans are only training the discipline of the Q. The veterans have been soldiers for many years, and they have survived previous large and small battles. But the recruits were crooked one by one. Smith. Ji Yuan was wearing a brand new black military uniform with an armed belt tied around his waist, making him look tall and handsome. He wore a hat with a large brim on his head, the brim of which was pulled down slightly, covering his eyes and revealing a tall nose bridge and a knife-like chin. His Majesty. The German instructor came over. Pull the Q training first, and prepare for physical training. Ji Yuan said. Yes. Smith nodded. Ji Yuan's plan is to keep only 2,000 troops. As for the extra 1,000 recruits, if they can persevere in physical training, they can also be allowed to stay in the army. All recruits and veterans. Ji Yuan walked to the high platform and stood still, scanning the recruits and veterans lined up in a company of 100 people below, he said loudly. I am your king, Ji Yuan. As soon as this sentence came out, the veterans were fine, but the recruits immediately became a little riotous. Your Majesty the King. His Majesty the King has come to see us in person. Many young recruits were excited for a while. Ji Yuan exempted them from the heavy tax this year. For the people at the bottom, Ji Yuan is a peerless good king. Soldiers, you are all warriors who defend the country, but warriors must also be selected. They must also be honed. If you are disabled or dead during training, then the kingdom will pay for you, and support your family. If you can stand out from the rest of the training layer by layer, you will get a medal of honor from me personally. An honor from the king himself. Immediately, not only the recruits, but even the veterans were a little rioted. This is the highest honor. Medals presented to them personally by their great majesty the king. In the next 10-kilometer long-distance race, the company that won the first place will receive the honor of the brave company awarded by me personally. This is an honor that belongs to the collective 100 members of your company. At the same time, you can enjoy the highest quality food in the next few days of meals, and the next month's salary will be the highest among everyone. But please pay attention, only when more than 50 members of your company cross the finish line at the same time, can you pass the test. Gu Genichi waved his hand, and immediately several knights came over carrying several boxes, and the boxes were opened in front of many soldiers. The first and second boxes are full of various meats, vegetables, and cheeses. Looks like it's all first class. In the past, only nobles could eat this. The third box turned out to be a box of gold coins. All the soldiers' eyes were straightened. The next words are for the veterans. 10 companies among you are veterans of our kingdom of Ross. After so many years of fighting, you are considered elite in the old army, but the new army is different. The new army pays attention to discipline, and at the same time, in the next 10 kilometers long distance race, if you lose to the recruit company, then not only will you not be rewarded, but you will also be punished. Do you understand? Gu Yuan glanced at those veterans. The special structure on the square was enough to clearly send every word of Gu Yuan to their ears. Your Majesty, don't worry. We are all veterans, how could we lose to a group of recruits who have just joined the army? Yes. Give these recruits some color in the next training. Let them know the gap between veterans and recruits. All the veterans worked hard one by one, and decided to give these new recruits some flair. The same goes for recruits, any company among you, if you reach the finish line before all the veteran companies, then you can also enjoy the first place treatment. This sentence made all the recruits boil. There is only one first place, but there can be more than one place surpassing the veteran. So what about veterans? You can still surpass them. His Majesty is watching us. Long live. All the soldiers looked excited, and they shouted loudly. The Luotc guards were stunned by Gu Yuan's side. Because he really didn't expect that Gu Yuan would mobilize all the soldiers, emotions with such a few words, such simple words. Looking at the excited and shouting soldiers below, Luotc's respect for Gu Yuan grew a little more in his heart. Rotis. His Majesty. Rotis quickly responded. I said before that I made you a viscount, but now I have cut off all the privileges of the nobility, so I feel that I owe you something. Gu Genichi's words made Rotis excited, and he immediately knelt down on one knee, and replied in fear, Your Majesty does not owe you anything, it is a great honor for you to serve Your Majesty. After the training, I decided to let you be the regiment commander and manage these soldiers. What do you think? Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. Hearing this sentence, Rotis was taken aback for a moment, and then he was ecstatic. Thank you, Your Majesty. Okay, don't think that this commander is easy to do. The new army is different from the old army. You can learn from Smith during this time. Gu Yuan waved his hand and said, Yes. Now, the preparations begin. All soldiers form a company and set off in line. The end point is Rum village outside the city of Ross. The ancient Genichi roared, announcing the start. For the 10-kilometer run, Gu Yuan didn't really ask them to compete, but to train their tenacity. Only soldiers with perseverance and tenacity can persevere, and it is stipulated that a company of more than 50 people can reach the finish line at the same time to win. The purpose is to train their team spirit. Morale, tenacity, discipline, teamwork, and collective honor are of paramount importance to an army. It is also the essential difference between the new army and the old army. The old-style army would be defeated if the casualties reached 20%, or even 10%, but the new-style army could endure 80% casualties and persist in fighting. Not even retreating until the last man dies. From this point of view, there is a huge gap between the new army and the old army. Chapter 14 Army Glory, Personality Cult started. 2/7. P.S. This is the second chapter of today, and there are 5 more chapters. Dear readers, please collect, comment, evaluate votes, and flowers. Of course, it is impossible to finish a 10-kilometer, 10,000-meter long distance race in one breath. 3,000 soldiers were organized in companies, and a team of 30 companies began to run from the square. There are also 100 knights in armor and riding horses around. When passing through the street, it also attracted many people to watch. At first they were able to maintain their formation, receiving cheers from the people on both sides of the street. But as they left the city, some recruits gradually couldn't keep up. Without him, the physique is too poor. Before, they were the poor at the bottom. They didn't have enough food and clothing to keep warm, and naturally they couldn't improve their physique. Not to mention asking them to run 10,000 meters, even if they ran 1,000 meters, they would still be exhausted. After running 3,000 meters, several companies of recruits had already fallen behind. The veterans were also out of breath, but they were still able to maintain their formation. Halfway through the journey, half of the recruit company was already behind the main force. "Tom, I can't hold on." The recruits had no formation at all. They were running in disorder. A thin young man of 17 or 18 years old had his legs weak and almost fell down. "Hold on. As long as we persevere, we will be honored by His Majesty the King himself. Think about it, Miss Nancy next door said that she will only marry warriors. If you get the honor, then she will hire you." Tom was sweating all over, but he grabbed Jerry who was about to fall, and spoke out of breath. "Miss Nancy, I must be honored by your Majesty." With Tom's words, Jerry exuded fighting spirit. In the world of Gu Yuan's previous life, the 10-kilometer run was not heavy duty. For the general army, it was just a child's play, pit. But as long as they cross this pit, they will truly enter the state of a soldier. You recruits, do you still want to beat us veterans? The honor bestowed by His Majesty is ours. After the distance of 8,000 meters, more than half of the recruit companies and some veteran companies began to lag behind, and some veterans at the front began to exert their strength. "Come on, the end is in front of you. You can't lose to them. Let these veterans know that our recruits are not vegetarian." Inspired by honor, money, and food, all the recruits and veterans at the front line fought their last breath to cross the finish line before others. "Yeah, we are number one." When Jerry and Tom were still out of breath and jogging very tiredly, they suddenly heard a burst of cheers. This voice immediately surprised everyone. Jerry and Tom looked forward, supporting each other. "I saw more than a dozen people in a veteran company sitting at the head of the village of Langmu, panting one by one, as if they had come out of the water. Not far away, several villagers looked at them curiously. They don't have enough people. They are not number one. Only when more than 50 people arrive at the same time can they be considered number one." A shout from a recruit suddenly woke them all up. "Where are the people in our company? Still behind. Hurry up and run over with them." All companies began to check the remaining number of their own companies. Both Tom and Jerry checked the remaining men in their company. 53. There are 53 people in our company. Hurry up. We are number one. Tom was ecstatic in his heart. He roared loudly, his voice extremely hoarse. At his call, the 50 people in their group immediately let out hoarse roars, and each of them moved their legs that were heavy and weak as if they were filled with lead, and ran wildly. "Damn it! Go help someone." The dozen or so veterans who reached the finish line first were all anxious, and they left the finish line one by one to help those in their company who were still beyond the finish line. "Hurry up." A veteran helped another veteran to run towards the finish line, but suddenly a gong sounded. The first to qualify. The fourth company of new recruits. 50 of them have reached the finish line. The loud shout of a knight made all the veterans beat their chests and stomp their feet in great annoyance. It was evening, in the barracks. The recruits stood in line one by one with their heads held high, while the veterans were somewhat decadent. Because they lost a recruit company and let a recruit company get the first place. Gu Yuan was wearing a pitch-black military uniform with long military boots on his feet and rode a tall horse, accompanied by his guards. "Look Tom, that's His Majesty, that's His Majesty." Seeing Gu Yuan appear, Jerry was excited, and growled at Tom beside him with incomparable reverence on his face. "I know I'm not blind." Tom answered Jerry helplessly. "That's His Majesty's guard, so handsome." The recruits all stared intently at the tall and straight soldiers in pitch-black military uniforms beside Gu Yuan. The fourth company of recruits, all of them are there, step forward. A knight shouted loudly, and Tom and Jerry stepped forward along with their companions. Soldiers, you have worked hard. Yuan nodded and came in front of these recruits. Die for His Majesty at any time. The recruits all looked excited and shouted in unison. Genichi beckoned, and a knight walked over holding a silver plate, on which there were neatly placed bronze medals. Recruit medal for courage. Yuan began to adorn these recruits with medals one by one. And every recruit who was awarded the bronze medal by Yuan seemed extremely excited, with his heart beating rapidly in his chest. Every recruit looked at Yuan excitedly with full reverence, Their Majesty the King. Personality cult. Unknowingly, and without Yuan's knowledge, the soldiers' personality cult of Genichi began to spread. Standing in front of the recruits is Their Majesty the King. Exempt them from taxes, and led 1,000 soldiers to defeat 50,000 Nords, their great king. In front of them at this moment, personally confer honor on them. The inevitable personality cult of Yuan began to spread among the recruits. Army personality cult is on. After Yuan awarded the medals to the 100 recruits, a system prompt suddenly sounded in his mind. The army's personal worship of Your Majesty has begun to spread, so Your Majesty will have 100% control over the army. The loyalty of soldiers to you will also increase day by day. Your Majesty, in the hearts of the soldiers, you are justice, you are glory, and you are victory. Chapter 15 How lucky we are to have His Majesty the King at the helm. 3/7. P.S. Today's third update. There are 4 more updates. Ask for tickets, brothers, 7 chapters a day. The update is so powerful, tickets are also awesome. While the recruits are training in full swing these days, the state-owned garment factory opened by Yuan here has also begun to recruit workers. A good-looking military uniform will undoubtedly increase the soldiers' sense of belonging to the army. Yuan personally designed the new uniforms for his army. There are no other requirements, just one: it must look good. May I ask why so many people like Germany in World War II now? In addition to their greatness, there is another reason, that is, the German military uniforms of World War II look good. Yes, that's a big reason. Many people are Yango. Whether they are strong or not is a matter of a moment, and being handsome is a matter of a lifetime. The military uniform designed by Yuan is similar to the German military uniform of World War II. It is completely black, with dark red moire patterns on the cuffs and collar. Oh, and armor. The armies of the past and modern times were not equipped with armor. That was because the enemy had the same weapons as them, and the armor could not stop the rifle. But this world is different, only Yuan's army has guns. The enemies use swords, spears, bows and arrows. Therefore, a good pair of armor can greatly enhance the defense of soldiers. However, the armor should not be a burden to the soldiers, nor can it affect the mobility of the soldiers. Considering various aspects such as cost and manufacturing level, Yuan designed a semi-predecessor breastplate that is light, has good defense, and does not look maneuverable. It can well protect the vital points of the upper body of soldiers. As for the helmet, the M42 equipped by Germany in World War II is still used. At the same time, soldiers are also equipped with a pair of iron masks. In order to prevent the enemy's arrows from hitting the soldier's face during the battle and causing damage. Thus, the image of the early army soldiers of the Kingdom of Ross appeared. Lined with a dark military uniform, with long military boots on his feet, an armed belt around his waist to carry ammunition, a Mauser 98K rifle on his shoulders, and a black front breastplate covering his chest, with the dark red Kingdom of Luz on the breastplate sign. He wears an M42 steel helmet on his head and a black iron mask on his face. Not only does it look handsome, but it's also intimidating. Old York was a tailor in the town of Kex. He was very skilled and lived a good life, but because of the invasion of the Nord Kingdom, his town was lost, and his business was also lost because of the Nord Kingdom's army. Destroyed once. Finally picked one up and fled to Rose City, but he lost his livelihood. In the city of Ross, people can only mend clothes for a living. But most of the income has to be taxed, so life is extremely difficult. Eat the last meal without the next meal. Recently, His Majesty the King announced that he would be exempted from tax for 1 year, which made the Old York very happy. But even if it is tax-free, he has no storefront, and he usually mends clothes for others, and his livelihood is only better, and he is barely hungry. Life is still difficult. I heard that the town of Kes has been recovered. Do you think we should leave the city of Ross and return to the town of Kes? Today, Old York brought several other friends who escaped from Ker's town together, and they gathered together to discuss matters. A few of them rented a house together, and several people lived in a small space. It is impossible not to leave. It is really impossible to live in Los Angeles. Old York. Old York. Good news. At this time, a middle-aged man walked in the door, and he looked very excited. What good news? Everyone looked over. Can there be better news than the news that His Majesty is exempt from taxes? Old York didn't think so. His Majesty the King opened a textile factory, and now he is recruiting workers on a large scale. Not only does each person get 3 silver coins per month, but he also manages food and housing. As soon as this sentence came out, everyone in the room was excited. What you said is true. Of course it's true, many people in the city have passed by now. Let's go, let's go. The Old York group was very excited. They asked all the way and soon found the newly opened textile factory. Old York thought he would show off his superb weaving, sewing and cutting skills when he arrived at the place, but he didn't expect that the recruiter just memorized his name, gave him a badge and said, "You will it the workers of the textile factory, go get a set of daily necessities." Old York couldn't help being stunned. Was it so simple? He hasn't shown his skills yet. Don't you want to test your weaving skills? Asked Old York. No need, just have hands and feet. Who knew that the clerk would not look at him when he threw a word over? Now Old York is not convinced. Weaving, sewing, this is a craft. What does it mean to have hands and feet? Even if it is to learn again, it will take at least 3 years to achieve a high level of craftsmanship. Old York made up his mind that after the meeting started, he would show them all his skills and let them see his craft. Old York took his badge to get a set of daily necessities: toothbrush, toothpaste, water cup, rice bowl, bedding and other things. These things are all high quality. Is this steel? My God, you need at least 1 silver coin to buy this bowl. A companion next to him touched the water glass and stainless steel bowl in shock. This thing is a toothbrush. It used to be used only by nobles, so why don't you give it to us for free? The other companion was also surprised. The factory has regulations that employees must maintain good personal hygiene. There is also a bathroom in the factory, and employees must take a shower every 3 days. The clerk glanced at them and said, "Ordinary people in this era can't even take a bath once a year. Taking a bath and brushing their teeth are the privileges of nobles. They just became workers and enjoyed it like this." The surprise of some other employees of Old York has not faded, so they came to the factory area. I will take you to familiarize yourself with the equipment first. This is a textile machine. It's not difficult to operate in this way. It will be fine if you practice for a while. A foreman led them to a weaving machine. The foreman took some thread materials and put them on the weaving machine. After a while, a piece of cloth was woven. So fast. Old York was dumbfounded. He was very familiar with this industry, but he had never seen this kind of thing, and even made him think that the loom was a magical creation. This was given to us by His Majesty the King. Only with His Majesty the King can we use this kind of thing. All right, I will take you to the dormitory to have a look later. You can familiarize yourself with the usage this afternoon, and we will officially start working tomorrow. The foreman smiled, his tone full of reverence for His Majesty the King. Your Majesty the King is amazing. Our country is extremely lucky to have such a great man as His Majesty the King. The surrounding workers all said sincerely. With things like looms, work efficiency is simply doubled. Chapter 16 Attack of 100,000 Troops. 4/7. P.S. Chapter 4, there are 3 more chapters today. Your Majesty, after this week's intensive training and selection, more than 600 people failed to persevere. There are currently 2,357 people in the army. After a week of factory rush, the matching military uniforms, helmets, and breastplates have basically been manufactured. It can be equipped with the army, but the rifle is still about 1,000 rods away. In the palace, the knights all put on military uniforms, carried 98K rifles on their backs, and hung long swords around their waists, standing around the palace on duty. And Stevens reported the matter respectfully in front of Gu Yuan. Almost, this one can put some rifles into the army first and teach them how to shoot. By the way, how many machine guns have been produced? The production of MG-42 general-purpose machine guns is not much, but now there are enough to equip each company with 5. Stevens looked at his account book and reported to Gu Yuanwei. It's almost time to start queuing shooting training. How is the army transfer of the Kingdom of Nord and the Kingdom of Lot going? Gu Yuan was lying on a bench. Next to him was a half-orc girl, Lena, who was wearing a maid outfit, holding a tray with grapes and standing beside Gu Yuan. The half-orc girls rescued by Gu Yuan's army have let go of their heavy vigilance after living in the palace for a week. Even liked the place a lot. Because there is no other place where other humans treat them well. In the past, they lived as slaves who were trafficked. They would be beaten, scolded and punished at any time. Basically, they only had one meal a day. Still the worst brown bread ever. But now, compared with the previous life around Gu Yuan, it is simply the difference between heaven and hell. The armies of the Kingdom of Nord and the Kingdom of Lot are mobilizing more and more frequently. The spies on the border between the two countries came to report that Prince Ragnar of the Nord Kingdom had gathered an army of 20,000, and 200 knights had crossed the border again. The army, it is estimated that their strength will reach 30,000. As for the Kingdom of Lot, it has brought together 80,000 troops and 1,000 knights. It has already crossed the border. I estimate that they will meet up in Sloan Town in a week. Hearing Stevens' report, Lena, who was serving Gu Yuan, trembled in her heart. An army of 110,000. That's a huge amount. Lena bet she had never seen so many people in her life, let alone so many soldiers. Will they win? Lena suddenly felt extremely worried. She doesn't want Gu Yuan to fail. She didn't want the only human youth who was good to her to die. Must win. Unconsciously, Lena murmured softly. There was a smile on the corner of Gu Yuan's mouth. He stretched out his hand and touched Lena's small head, feeling the furry feel, and said casually, "It's just a group of chickens and dogs. No matter how many people there are, they are still ants. Although I only have 2,000 troops, it is enough to deal with their 100,000 troops." The language is light, but it has full appeal. Infected Lena's young heart. This is Gu Yuan's confidence in his army, his weapons, and his pride. The border of the Kingdom of Ross. There are spears like forests, soldiers have bright helmets, and the winding army can't be seen at a glance. One after another noble flags fluttered in the air, showing the nobles these soldiers belong to. Prince Ragnar of the Kingdom of Nord led the army himself. He wore a full-coverage armor with magic runes tattooed on it. He looked at the land of the Kingdom of Loth in front of him with full hatred in his eyes. "Where is the army of the Kingdom of Lot?" Ragnar asked. "Your Highness, according to their letter, they have crossed the border and are on their way to meet us. According to the route, we will meet them in Sloan Town in 7 days." A knight reports. "Junior brother, isn't it just a group of wild mages? We are regular mages certified by the Central Magic Empire, and according to intelligence, their army will not exceed 5,000 people. I don't think there is any need for the army of the Lot Kingdom. Only we will okay." At this time, a young man wearing a robe and full of pride came to Ragnar. "That's right, brother Ragnar. I feel that I can kill all those wild mages by myself. At that time, the brother king of the Lost Kingdom must let me torture him. I have recently researched a new kind of magic that allows the magic power to flow into a person's body and swell like a worm in the flesh and blood. Thinking about it, the painful expression on that person's face is really pleasing. Ha 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 ha." The other mage had an abnormally happy expression on his face, and he laughed as if enjoying himself very much. "Brother, I also know that only is are enough, but I'm not willing to completely crush Gu Yuan under my feet." Ragnar looked a little hideous. I want to see his desperate look when he faces an army of 100,000. When the time comes to face our 100,000 strong army, I will be able to see Gu Yuan's desperate expression, begging for mercy, and wailing endlessly, and that will make me happy. Ragnar closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and when he said this, his expression became happy again. He seemed to have seen Ji Yuan's desperate and painful expression before his head was cut off with a sword after he wailed and begged for mercy. Chapter 17 2000 verses 100,000. 5/7. P.S. The 5th update today, there are still 2 more updates, it will be updated in a while, let's vote more for the sake of 7 updates a day. Army of the Lot Kingdom. A total of 80,000 troops marched in a meandering manner, as if they could connect Tongtian land, spears entered the forest, and banners were connected like mountains. King Lot IX of the Lot Kingdom was sitting on a horse, and next to him was his 17-year-old son. Father, why did Prince Nord just send you a letter and you poured all the strength of our whole country to attack the Kingdom of Ross? I heard that the Kingdom of Ross was beaten badly by the Nord Kingdom. There are only a few thousand soldiers left in the army. If this is the case, the Nord army can solve it alone. Why do we need us? Little Prince Lot asked puzzledly. I heard that in the last battle, magicians appeared in the Kingdom of Ross, so only 1,000 people defeated the 50,000 army of the Nord Kingdom. Lot X replied. Magician. Little Prince Lot was taken aback. Father, they have magicians, so let's go. Hey, Ragnar's teacher, Leander of the Gutongsi Alliance Empire, is a person who is many times more noble than ordinary magicians. Lot X sighed, with a bitter expression on his face. In fact, he didn't want to come, but Prince Nord used his teacher's name to pressure him. Leander, the great magician of the ancient Tong's Alliance Empire. Is that something he can afford to offend? Befriended several Grand Dukes in the Gutongsi Alliance Empire, only one letter is needed to call the Dragon Knight Legion to destroy their country. That's someone who can attract Dragon Knights. They are mere mortals, they are knights with great strength. How could they be the opponents of the Dragon Knight who is the lowest strength and also a great knight? And the combat power of the Dragon Knight is not only the knight itself, but also the dragon soaring in the sky. Their 80,000 troops might not be enough for a dozen Dragon Knights to kill them. Lot X dared not give Ragnar face, but he did not dare not give Ragnar's teacher, Leander face. Moreover, there are only a few thousand troops left in the Kingdom of Loth. Lot X estimated that their 80,000 troops used to be just to save Ragnar's face, and at most they lined up beside them to cheer and cheer. Think of it as paying your own money to invite your own army to travel. As for military expenses, the accumulation of treasury property of the Lot Kingdom for hundreds of years is nothing. Ragnar is nothing, but if he can please Leandel, preferably his youngest son as an apprentice, then he will make a lot of money. Then their Kingdom of Lot will rise completely. Lot X also has his own thoughts, which is why he brought his youngest son here this time. Not only to let him see the world, but more, it is also the idea of taking his youngest son as a disciple in case Leander takes a fancy to him. 5 days later, the Kingdom of Nord gathered the remnants of the army in the Kingdom of Ross all the way, and rushed to the town of Sloan first. The army of the Nord Kingdom lined up and stationed in the town of Sloan brazenly. Ragnar looked gloomy at the empty Sloan town in front of him, and he smiled coldly. Yuan, you were really cowardly, and you actually asked all the townspeople to evacuate from the beginning. Fortunately, Yuan had the foresight to evacuate all the residents of this generation to Los Angeles. Bandits pass like a comb, soldiers pass like a grate. The army of this era is really not a good synonym, especially the enemy's army. Usually, every time they attack a place, they will burn, kill and loot, which is worse than bandits. At the beginning, Ragnar planned to massacre the local residents, but unexpectedly, they were all evacuated. This made Ragnar, who had lost his abacus, even more angry. But Ragnar knew that it was useless to be angry now, and Ragnar was looking forward to seeing how he wailed after annihilating Yuan's army. After waiting for 2 days, the army of Lot Kingdom also arrived. 80,000 troops, the two sides merged into one place, a total of 110,000 troops. Prince Ragnar, please take me to say hello to Lord Leandel. Lot X spoke very respectfully when he saw Ragnar. But his respect was not really for Ragnar, but to Leander behind Ragnar. Ragnar nodded and waved his hand. Let's go and completely annihilate the army of the Kingdom of Loss. After the city is broken, I have to slaughter the city to vent my hatred. Just as the army was about to set off to Los Angeles, Ragnar suddenly received a report from the messenger. His Royal Highness, King Los, there is a letter from Gu Yuan III. A messenger came to Ragnar and respectfully handed a letter to Ragnar. Subscribe to Chinese novel audio wave. What? Is it King Rose who wants to surrender? And Lot Ix couldn't help but glanced at the letter. Before he could finish his sentence, he saw Ragnar laughing up to the sky as if he saw some big joke. Ha 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 ha. Gu Yuan is so reckless that he invited me to a decisive battle on the plain. Smiling and laughing, Ragnar tore the letter to pieces in an instant. What kind of thing is he? Well, if he wants a decisive battle, I will fight him, a lifeless thing. Ragnar's expression was ferocious, and he roared angrily. A decisive battle in the field. Lot Ix was taken aback. Is this King Loth crazy? He only has a few thousand troops. If he defends the city, he can survive for a while, but in a decisive battle in the wild, he will definitely die within half a day. After all, with a few thousand fighting against an army of 110,000, Lot Ix did not think that the army of the Kingdom of Ross could win. When Lot Ix came, he saw that Ragnar also had a mage, and it should be the mage accompanied by Leander's apprentices. There are even 3 great knights. And the knights in their army and the cavalry accompanying the knights add up to a total of 30,000 cavalry. What kind of heart and guts did King Los have eaten so that he dared to fight them on the plain? Wally Plains. This is a very open plain, which is usually the grazing land of the Kingdom of Ross, but it was taken away in the previous war with the Nord Kingdom. Although Gu Yuan sent American soldiers to take it back later, the cattle, sheep, residents, it has been burned, killed and looted by the army of the Nord Kingdom. Now it is very suitable as a decisive battlefield for the army. It is more suitable for cavalry combat. Because it's all plains. The wind blew the clouds, and the cold wind blew the overlapping flags like mountains. The 2 armies lined up and watched from a distance. If you look down in the sky, you can clearly see the gap between the 2 sides. Not's allied forces, a total of 110,000 troops spread out on the plain, like covering green cloth with a piece of black cloth. On the side of the Kingdom of Ross, the 2,000 people are more like a black stain on the green cloth, very inconspicuous and inconspicuous. The 2 sides are at war, and the battle is on the verge of breaking out. Chapter 18 The terrifying firepower of general-purpose machine gun. 6/7. P.S. This is the 6th update and one more update. In the clear blue sky, an eagle soared freely, its sharp eagle eyes flickered a little. It looked down, and saw 2 armies on the plain below looking at each other. There is a huge gap in the number of the 2 sides, one side is densely packed, with countless flags, like a neatly arranged ocean. On the other side, the queue is neat and orderly, but the number of people is far from that of the enemy. 110,000 against 2,000. On a winding path in the distance, a carriage was driving. The driver was a young girl in green leather armor. At this moment, a strange light shone in the golden eyes of this young girl. Your Highness, my Eagle Scouts have discovered that there are human armies fighting on the plain ahead. The girl seemed to see something out of thin air. She turned her head and said into the carriage in surprise. With this turn of the head, the long golden hair fluttered in the wind, revealing a pointed ear. Elf. We have traveled to the mainland so far, is it still rare for human beings to kill each other? There was a clear and sweet voice like a silver bell coming from inside the carriage. Your Majesty, this time seems to be very interesting. The elf girl driving the car said. Interesting. A questioning voice came from inside the carriage. Well, judging by the number of people on one side, there are more than 100,000 people, while the other side seems to have only 1,000 people. The driving girl replied, 1,000 people versus 100,000. The man in the carriage was taken aback. King Rose. Surrender. If you are captured without a fight, then our Highness promises to kill you alone and not your people. Between the 2 sides, a knight rode his horse and came not far from the army of the Kingdom of Ross, and he shouted loudly. Gu Yuan was wearing armor and sitting at the rear of the army. He sneered. Tell them, if they surrender, I can only kill Ragnar instead of the ordinary soldiers of the Nord Kingdom. After getting Gu Yuan's answer from his subordinates, Ragnar's eyes were bloodshot, and he roared. What kind of thing is he? Dare to talk to me like this, 100,000 versus 2,000, he thinks he is still. Is there any chance of winning? Stop being so talkative, attack me. Kill them all. I will take Gu Yuan to Los Angeles City, hang him on the top of the city, and let him watch with his own eyes. His people have been slaughtered by me. Ragnar let out a roar. The war drums were beating, the wind was howling, and the 110,000 troops moved slowly. At this time, Gu Yuan closed his eyes. After annihilating the 50,000 Nord army before, he won a chance to draw a 5-star lottery and has not used it yet. Now, let's try it out before the battle to see if he is the Emperor of Europe. Welcome to the lottery function. You have a 5-star lottery. Do you want to use it now? Yes. The lottery draw begins. In front of Gu Yuan, a roulette wheel that only he could see appeared out of thin air, with light flowing on it, and the pointer began to rotate. 5 Grizzly tanks, 1 V3 rocket car, 100,000 tons of TNT equivalent nuclear bomb and supporting silos, 120 mm PM38 mortar manufacturing blueprint full set, B-52 bomber 1 cloud explosion full set of bullet manufacturing drawings. There are 6 rewards on the roulette, and the one that surprised Gu Yuan the most is that there is a nuclear bomb. Every time the pointer turns to the nuclear bomb, Gu Yuan's heart will beat. Gu Yuan thought to himself, it won't be so unreasonable, but don't give him a nuclear bomb before the start of the game. And after the nuclear bomb, Gu Yuan is useless at all now. The pointer slowed down. There is a tendency to go to the nuclear bomb. When the pointer stopped, Gu Yuan's heart skipped a beat. Congratulations to your majesty for obtaining the full set of 120 mm PM38 mortar manufacturing drawings. To be honest, Gu Yuan was a little disappointed that he didn't get the nuclear bomb, because it could be hidden as a big hole card after all. However, the 120 mm PM38 mortar is also good. This is a mortar developed by a certain Red Power during World War II. It is said to be a mortar, but its caliber is 120 mm. It's like a field cannon. Your Majesty, their cavalry has moved. At this time, Gu Yuan was interrupted by a shout. I saw the 1,000 knights and 30,000 cavalry galloping out of the Not coalition army 2,000 meters away. Looking down from the sky, the entire 30,000 cavalry is like a huge black sword, trying to pierce into the formation of Ross's army. The 2,000 soldiers of the Kingdom of Ross carried 98K on their shoulders, and there was no expression on their faces wearing iron masks, but everyone couldn't help swallowing. Tom was wearing a helmet and his face was covered with an iron mask. He stood on the ground and held the grip of the MG-42 general-purpose machine gun standing on a high stand, aiming at the cavalry who were gradually approaching in the distance. Don't mess around, follow the usual training, trust the rifles in your hands. Trust yourselves too. I, Gu Yuan, King of the Kingdom of Loss, will always be with you. Raise your gun, ready to shoot. Gu Yuan stood up and shouted loudly. Your Highness, the battle has begun, and the cavalry on the side with more people has begun to charge. The driving girl shouted excitedly. Has the side with fewer people not surrendered? There is no hope of winning with such a gap. Alas, there will be thousands more dead souls on this continent. After the battle is over, let's go to the battlefield and pray for their dead souls, hoping that their souls can go to the kingdom of God. The girl in the carriage sighed. After all, 1,000 people are against 100,000, and it is impossible for the side with fewer people to win. She admired those troops who were far fewer than the enemy's army, but who dared to fight to the last moment, because they always reminded her of the last elf royal guard who regarded death as home when the elf empire was on the verge of extinction. The cavalry came surging like a tide. Tens of thousands of cavalry are equivalent to tank armor groups in ancient warfare. However, that was against an enemy who was also equipped with cold weapons, and the army of the Kingdom of Ross was equipped with hot weapons. Rifles, machine guns. The range of the 98K can reach 800 meters, and the barrel of the MG-42 general-purpose machine gun can be replaced, which can be used as a light machine gun or a heavy machine gun. When it is a light machine gun, the range is 800 meters, and when it is a heavy machine gun, the range is 1,000 meters, but the most terrifying thing about the MG-42 general-purpose machine gun is its rate of fire. The lowest is 1,200 rounds per minute, and the highest is 1,500 rounds per minute. In the Army of the Kingdom of Ross, each company of GU Yuan is equipped with 5 MG-42 general-purpose machine guns. There are 2,300 troops, 23 companies, and 115 MG-42 general-purpose machine guns. The bullets of the Mauser 98K and the bullets of the MG-42 general-purpose machine gun are common, and both use 7.92 mm bullets. Chapter 19 Where is the Magician in the Kingdom of Loss? 7/7. P.S. Today's 7 chapters are finally updated, and readers are invited to vote a lot. In front of the 30,000 cavalry, there are 3 knights in golden full-body plate armor leading the horse and standing at the forefront. These 3 are all great knights. Ha 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 ha, just these 2,000 people dare to stand in front of us. A knight in golden armor laughed loudly. Looking at the weak line of defense of the Ross Kingdom army ahead, he shouted, "You two, I'll take a step first. I can kill through their formation like a piece of paper by myself. Damn it, you be asterisk 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 D, don't try to get in front of me." The other 2 knights in golden armor immediately clamped their horses in the stomach, and also accelerated their speed. These 3 knights are so fast, are they rushing to die so fast? GU Yuan stood behind and watched the 2 golden armored knights from a distance. What GU Yuan didn't know was that the 3 of them were all great knights, and although they were all riding horses, if they didn't ride horses, they would be even faster. Wait for my order and get ready to shoot. Under GU Genichi's order, the company commander of each company passed the order down, and 2,000 soldiers formed a thin formation with the company as a unit. This formation is stretched horizontally. Although it is long, the formation is very thin. The 3 great knights took the lead, and quickly left 30,000 cavalry and 1,000 knights behind. Ha 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 ha, I seem to be able to hear the wailing of them being killed by me. The soldier at the front swallowed. From this distance, he could already see the patterns on the 3 golden armored knights clearly. The 3 golden armored knights were no more than 30 meters away from them. The other cavalry knights were still 500 meters away. Shooting. GU Genichi shouted loudly. Bang 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 bang. The recruits slammed the triggers of their rifles like an amnesty, and a burst of gunshots flashed across the plain, echoing across the plain. What sound? The 3 golden armored knights were puzzled for a while. But the next moment, they felt as if their bodies had been hit viciously by a fierce punch. Lowering their heads in doubt, they saw the shattered armor on their chests and the spewing blood. Hiss! The war horse neighed. With their vitality and physical strength, if they only took 1 or 2 shots, then they could fully sustain their injuries and slaughter hundreds of people by themselves. But what they were facing was the rifle firepower of a whole company in front of them. They were beaten into sieves in an instant, including their men and horses. What? That is how the matter. A magician got up from his seat in shock, something kind of gleam in his eyes. Apparently, by some kind of magic, he saw what was ahead. The 3 great knights didn't even touch the opponent's formation, and even led the horse, they died unexpectedly. And he didn't feel any magic fluctuations at all, that is to say, the other party didn't use magic. Junior brother, the situation is wrong, let the cavalry retreat. The magician immediately yelled at Ragnar. What? Ragnar looked over suspiciously. Suddenly there was an uninterrupted loud noise ahead. The voices are connected together, resounding on the plain like continuous thunder on a sunny day. Facing the cavalry unit that was approaching in less than 200 meters away from them, under GU Yuan's order, all the soldiers opened fire. It wasn't that GU Yuan didn't want to let the cavalry get closer, but that these people under his command were just recruits. If they were to line up and shoot, they wouldn't be able to withstand the psychological pressure of the enemy rushing in front of them before shooting. What's more, the 98K in their hands has an effective range of 800 meters. Shooting at 200 meters is also to ensure the density of firepower. Tom pulled the trigger of the MG-42 general-purpose machine gun on the high bracket in front of him fiercely. For a while, the coherent gunshots were like continuing to pull a saw to saw wood, which made people feel frightened when they heard it. With 2,000 troops and 115 MG-42 general-purpose machine guns, the firepower network formed is undoubtedly very amazing. A total of 30,000 cavalry, they kept charging forward, but when they approached the army of the Kingdom of Ross 200 meters away, accompanied by the terrifying and dense gunshots, it seemed that the 200 meters was the limit drawn by the god of death. Arriving here seems to have encountered a wall, and the person who was hit was thrown off his back in an instant. This invisible wall is called death. Ah! His law. We are under attack. It's the enemy's attack, it's the enemy's magician. Where's our magician? How come? Ah! Countless cavalrymen turned on their backs and fell to the ground after being shot. They wailed and screamed. He kept yelling that he was attacked by magicians, but the only thing that could respond to them was cold bullets. The excellent armor that the proud knights usually wear, which can perfectly defend against bows and arrows, and long sword attacks, is like paper under the power of bullets. Bullets pierced through their armors, pierced their bodies, and even tore their flesh and blood to rain a shower of blood. In just such a short moment, the battlefield instantly turned into an extremely bloody purgatory of flesh and blood. The power of thermal weapons and firearms is so terrifying. Several mages. Didn't you say that you would shoot when you sensed the fluctuations of their mages? Now their magicians are slaughtering our soldiers, act now. Lodix stood up from his seat in an instant. He listened to the gunshots in the distance and saw his cavalry screaming as if they were being crushed by an invisible big hand. His heart ached. Of those 30,000 cavalrymen and 1,200 knights, 25,000 cavalrymen and 1,000 knights belonged to his kingdom of Lot. This is all the background of his Lot kingdom. His heart is bleeding. Don't make noise. The eyes of Ragnar's senior brothers seemed to be able to spew out flames. They stared and searched out all the magic power in their bodies. Where is it? Where is it? Hole, why can't I find it? Damn it, where did their magician hide and launch the attack? Why can't they find magic fluctuations everywhere? But without magic fluctuations, how could there be such an attack? The 12 magicians, each with red eyes and surging magic power, stared and screamed, looking very painful. Why? Why can't I find the opponent's magician no matter what? How could it not be found? Chapter 20 Breakthrough, Sky Mage. 1/7. P.S. Meow, I overslept today, now the first update is here, and there are 6 more updates today. Huge and dense gunshots rang out, and the eagle in the sky seemed to be frightened, and raised its height again with a howl. After that, the eagle looked down at the battlefield again with lingering fear, but the result made it unbelievable. I thought that the soldiers on the side with fewer people would be charged by the cavalry, and they would be completely destroyed. But I didn't expect the situation to be completely opposite. With the loud noise, those cavalrymen fell to the ground one by one like cutting wheat on the way of charging. Damn, damn, damn. Why is this happening? Is every soldier in the army of the Kingdom of Ross a magician? Ragnar stood up abruptly, roaring. Impossible. All this is completely different from what he expected. According to his expectation, the army of the Kingdom of Ross should be vulnerable, and it would be completely destroyed by a wave of charges by his cavalry. No, it shouldn't be like this. Ragnar roared angrily. Junior brother, let's do it. One of the 12 magicians stood up, and there was an indescribably fierce light in his eyes. Since you can't find where the magicians of the Kingdom of Loss are, then destroy them all. Everyone, let's do it. Let these hidden wild mages of the Kingdom of Ross see the strength of orthodox mages. The 12 magicians all stood up, their bodies were shaken, their toes were 30 centimeters above the ground, and there was a breeze blowing below, they were actually suspended in the air. But they didn't raise the height again, but galloped forward like this. Some of the 12 magicians had heat waves all over their bodies, and after a while, a little fire appeared around him, and several fireballs instantly moved around him like rail guns. Flames, ice cones, wind blades, hundreds of magical attacks appeared around the 12 magicians at once. If you rely on ordinary magic, you can use up to 5 or 6 magic spells and your magic power will be exhausted, but each of them actually released more than 10 consecutive spells. And it looks like there's still room left. Yuan, you will die this time. Ragnar gritted his teeth viciously, as if he was about to bleed. 12 outstanding magicians shot together, and the magic they released was undoubtedly earth-shattering. Once these attacks fall, they are enough to kill thousands of people in an instant. Several junior brothers, here is a magic scroll, given by the master, which can completely resist any magic attack for a minute. The magic shield has been removed, let's use this magic scroll for my brother. Looking at the situation on the opposite side, there are many mages hidden in the kingdom of loss, gone. Halfway, a mage took out a scroll and said, "Brother spent money. That's it." The other 11 magicians naturally nodded, and then removed the magic shields around them, and replaced them with the magician's scroll shield. A barrier of purple light protected all of them, and the 12 people were suspended like this, neatly like a city wall flying in the air. We are still 500 meters away from the enemy, and when we are close to 150 meters, we will throw all the magic out in one breath. Don't be afraid, any magic attack from the enemy will not be able to penetrate our shield. A magician said in a deep voice. All the magicians jumped for joy, and several of them still had cruel expressions in their eyes. Call out. Well, suddenly, a magician let out a muffled groan, and instantly fell from the air and fell to the ground. Seventh junior brother. What's going on? Why did seventh junior brother fall down? The other magicians were startled and hurried to check, but this look made them die. There was a large broken hole in the head of the magician who fell to the ground. The part of the head from the right eyebrow upwards was completely broken, and the brains were scattered all over the floor. He was headshot by a stray bullet. What's going on? Brother, didn't you say that your magic shield cannot be broken by any magic attack? All the magicians glared at the magician who took out the scroll. No, I don't know. The magician obviously had never seen such a situation, and he panicked immediately. Whoosh whoosh. Dozens of galloping sounds sounded, and the 3 magicians shuddered, and they retreated unconsciously. Several streaks of blood burst out from their bodies, and they opened their eyes wide, with expressions of disbelief in their eyes. Doubt, unwillingness, anger. But they have nothing to do at the moment. Before dying, a magician looked deeply at the magician who took out the scroll. He wanted to say something, but he couldn't say it. Boom, boom, boom. 3 heavy voices sounded, and the 3 magicians fell to the ground covered in blood, dying of breath. No. Second senior brother. 11th junior brother. Immediately, the others were furious, and their hearts were filled with endless anger. I will fight with you. Suddenly, one of the magicians galloped out, roaring angrily, his voice full of pain. 12 junior brothers. Don't be impulsive. The other magicians held back the pain and anger in their hearts, and shouted hastily. Ah, he hates it. The few people who died just now were senior brothers who had been with him day and night for more than 10 years. He was an orphan since he was a child, and only his master and a few senior brothers treated him well, just like his real relatives. At this moment, with his relatives dying in front of him like this, the resentment and mental fluctuations in his heart reached the extreme at this moment. The magician who rushed out screamed, and the magic power in his body kept surging, and after a while, a huge fireball with a diameter of more than 10 meters gathered in the sky above him. The raging flames are blazing, as if they can devour everything, and burn everything in the world. Under the influence of this heat, the weeds on the ground instantly burned and spread. The fire is all over the sky, and the momentum is like a rainbow. The 12th junior brother, his magic power has even improved to a higher level. There was shock in the eyes of a magician. The 12th junior brother seems to be breaking through to become a sky mage. The other magicians yelled in surprise, regardless of their sadness. Sky mages, mages who can really soar in the sky, they can destroy a night order with a single blow. The other mages no longer felt much sadness at this moment, but the corners of their mouths rose wildly. If there is a sky mage among them, it means that they have reached the realm of their teacher, Leander. It has another place in the entire Gutongxi Alliance Empire, and it is an existence that is admired by thousands of people. This blow. I will bury you all. The eyes of the 12 junior brothers were filled with flames, their hands gathered together, and their magic power continued to grow larger and surge upwards. And the diameter of the fireball is still increasing. 10 meters, 12 meters, 15 meters. After a while, a huge fireball with a diameter of more than 20 meters appeared in the sky. Thank you for watching. Continue exploring the fascinating world of Chinese novels with us. Hit that subscribe button on Chinese Novel Audio Wave to stay updated with our latest stories. And never miss out on a great listen.